Welcome, viewers, to the sixth episode of BioBros. Derek,
What's up,
Steve,
guys?
how you guys
What's
doing?
up, Leo? Good. How are you?
I think we have some housekeeping before we start anything else. We just want to let the viewers know. We do apologize for interrupting each other. Sometimes we get excited. We like the subjects. We're very enthusiastic, and we actually like to get to speak to each other. I think, at least I can speak for myself. Unfortunately, I don't have friends living by me that are interested in similar subjects.
Same here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bear with us, guys. And also there's a lag, so it's not like we're talking in person. Other than that, I wanted to mention, another thing I wanted to mention is like sometimes people will make mistakes. The other day I was mentioning to Derek quite casually that I found it funny that the last podcast, I didn't even know adrafinil was a prodrug of modafinil.
Oh, yeah.
I may have known years ago, but I absolutely did not know when I was taking it last time. And I have the bottle, and I just took some actually earlier today. And I don't know what it's good. I know the pharmacology of modafinil a little bit because I looked into it a while ago, because there was always this mysterious thing about whether modafinil is really affecting dopamine and how much it's affecting norepinephrine or net. But I didn't know. So that is cool. It's cool for me to learn something. It's not embarrassing. It's the opposite. It's for me more enjoyable, and I hope that viewers will also feel the same way. Whenever we are all corrected, that's how we learn. And I love to be corrected, and I've learned so much from specifically Derek and Steve. And I hope it goes all the ways around. So whenever I feel like when you listen to a person who's interested in learning, but they talk from authority and they don't seem to have that curiosity, that's a bad sign, actually. That's a sign of a conmanship and the credit calls to authority and so on. And I have none of that. I don't know anything. I'm just like one of you guys. I'm just reading papers. And if you guys send me papers, you'll teach me too.
Right. And I think it's a learning process for everybody. And it's okay to forget something along the way. Because, half of it, like sometimes I watch some of your videos, right? And from Derek. And then I can't even remember watching them. And I watch them again. And I learn it again. And then in the back of my head, it's like, wait a minute. I've heard this somewhere before, even though I learned it from the exact same video.
I'm getting to the point where I've seen so much stuff that I need to watch it 5 to 10 times sometimes before I remember. And I'll see the same video about the same topic, or a different video about the same topic come up a year later by the same creator. And then I'll go watch it and be like, oh, this looks good, even though I don't even remember I watched it a year ago.
Did you, Derek, unprivate some of your older videos? Because I get recommendations from you now about fragrances and that kind of stuff.
The algorithm lately, the way it's been working, it's just been going insane in terms of, I think it just really likes my upload frequency. So now it's hammering people with stuff that I posted like 4 years ago. So randomly a video. Yeah. Right now. So anyway, like random videos will just pop off that were at 5,000 views for 4 years. They'll just blow up to 100K and then they'll kind of die. And then another video will just go up to 100K and then die. It's really weird. Like it's just, you guys have had stuff that just randomly for no reason one day starts gaining views again. Like that kind of thing. The more videos you have, eventually something you posted 2 years ago that even back then you were like, wow, I'm surprised that performed so poorly. 3 years later, it performs well. It makes no sense.
Yeah, the good thing about YouTube is once it's online, people can find it with the keywords. And it's always what I struggled with Instagram. It's just the post of the day. And then the next day you forget it. And it's impossible to find back with those hashtags. It's impossible.
Yeah, it's not very SEO friendly, Instagram, unfortunately.
No. So that's why I moved to YouTube.
I wanted to bring up another housekeeping issue something great happened last week. I discovered that one of our listeners went to his doctor, as we always recommend them, to check for H. pylori. It's a really easy test. And I think since we have a big viewership here, I'd love people to know there's a bacteria, pathologic bacteria, that about 50% of the world's population has. Now, a lot of that is because a lot of people live in India and China, and there's a lot of H. pylori over there. But especially if you've traveled outside the North America and Western Europe recently, it's a great idea to check if you have H. pylori. Just today, I was surprised to find out that H. pylori is also associated with thyroid autoimmune disease, like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, which, Derek, we were talking about last time. And of course, this gentleman was checking it out because of gastric cancers. H. pylori is one of the main causes of stomach cancer in the world. So if you're talking about dysbiosis in your microbiome, something we didn't talk about last time, it's an easy test. You go to your doctor, you do a breathalyzer, you find out, and you cure yourself before you get cancer. Great.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that checked because I have stomach cancer in my family, and I went to China and India.
And you live in Thailand.
Yeah, and I live in Thailand, but I don't eat the Thai food, so I'm in the green. I cook most of my own food. I'm going for Lebanese tonight. After this podcast, I'm gonna have some hummus.
Well, what about that sandwich, that weekly sandwich?
I skipped.
Suspicious sandwich.
Suspicious.
That's the sandwich with the H. pylori. That's that nice.
No,
I know what you're talking about. Those nice, like in Dubai, we have them too. Like cafeterias make these amazing, cool sandwiches. In the West, they don't have. I don't know how to describe it, but they're like knockoff burgers with like a lot of ketchup and mayonnaise and different kinds of interesting things.
Mama burgers.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonder bread.
So is this something that you should proactively check for, or would it be something you'd only wait until you're symptomatic to check for?
Proactive. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say maybe for your audience, if you could just announce to them, hey guys, there's this test. It's so easy to do. Probably, let's say if they're in the West, maybe 20% of them have it and they can cure it really easily, prevent long-term effects with their, potentially stomach cancer, really a lot of dysbiosis in the microbiome. As I said, autoimmune even functions with the thyroid. The list goes on and on and on. In fact, it's very, South Korea has the highest rate of stomach cancer in the world, and they have the combination of two carcinogens. They have a high rate of H. pylori, and they eat kimchi, which both has, I guess 3 carcinogens technically. Kimchi has then it has the capsaicin as well as it's what do they call that when you have it's
the probiotics that are in kimchi?
No, not probiotics, but like it's I don't know the word in English. When you store something and like keep it there for a while.
Like plaque buildup in the intestinal plaque buildup. No.
Like sauerkraut, all of those kind of things are, I don't know what the word
fermented,
is in English.
right?
I speak 2 languages. Yeah, I guess it's fermented. Yeah, that might be the word. It's like sauerkraut and all of those. They're not just from pickled things, all those kind of things like that. There's another word than fermented and pickled. I forgot what it was. But all of those things are
preservatives, because that's why it's like preserved vegetables, right?
Actually, I don't know what they call it, but the World Health Organization lists it as a carcinogen. It's well known to be like all pickled things are carcinogens. That's well known.
Vinegar?
Capsaicin, huh?
Vinegar? Because
no, not vinegar.
Kimchi, no,
not vinegar. That's the word that I'm looking for. Oh my God. Wait, it's called pickled food. Yeah, it's called. I just googled it. It's called pickled food. You can just go on Google Scholar, right? Pickled food, gastric cancer.
Did you continue the recording?
No, I paused.
I did on my end.
Okay, so it's okay. Yeah, so before you continue, then make sure you hit the proceed button.
Yeah, so no, I did absolutely, but it's pickled foods. If you just go on Google Scholar, right, pickled foods, cancer, you'll see it. It's a carcinogen, and then you have capsaicin combined with that, and then you have a lot of H. pylori. They have the #1 rate of gastric cancer in the world. So yeah, it's an easy test to check.
So what do you do to fix it? Like antibiotic?
Nuclear antibiotics. They nuke you. It's pretty intense. They give you like several forms of them, and then you have to repopulate your microbiome, and who knows what the damage is there. But this thing is so cytotoxic that it causes cancers. Imagine the kind of bacteria you're dealing with.
Does it go systemic or stay in the intestinal tract?
It must. I don't know. I don't know if it goes systemic. Most of the cancers are in the intestinal tract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't know how what the extent of it is. Maybe one day I should do a dedicated video.
Yeah. But there's that famous Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy who I sent you a couple days ago, and I've done a video on him before, and he's had brutal stomach issues for years on end, just relentlessly, apparently, to the point that he can't even eat almost enough to maintain his weight, let alone gain weight. I just put in the chat box his most recent post a couple days ago where he went to go test for H. pylori. And then he says, we have narrowed my stomach issues down to 2 things: bile reflux or gastroparesis, a situation where my stomach doesn't empty properly, meaning I can't get enough food to maintain and gain size because my stomach is always full from the last meal. Both cause nausea and both make eating hard. Both of them have treatments as well. And I will be doing some more virtual meetings with doctors this month to see what the best options are. hopefully we can get this resolved. And I finally reached my true athletic potential. Blah, 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 blah. He says he's been feeling like death and an inch from vomiting the whole time, yet still managing to win for the last 3 years. So this guy, you know, a lot of people speculate about his hormone use and whatnot. And people were tagging me asking, is this steroid induced or what's the deal? And I know this is more of your guys' wheelhouse than mine as far as GI issues. So I wanted to defer to you and see what you thought on this in particular. Like the H. pylori thing obviously ties into this well. And the bile, I know, Steve, you often talk about that and what you could do to attenuate those issues. So
yeah, so they did an ultrasound on this guy, right? Where did he post the results? Because I know we were talking about this a couple of days ago, and but I didn't follow up on it. So I mentioned, you know, a lot of guys get bile acid reflux or backflow or biliary obstruction because there's something wrong in the gallbladder. So maybe that's gallstones or some gallbladder inflammation, and that prevents, you know, the proper bile acid formation into the intestinal tract. And then now, you know, food doesn't get digested well, but they also don't detox the liver correctly. And you've seen that with a couple of guys that have very high liver enzymes, and then, you know, clear stool basically because there's no bile acid that is able to color the stool. So that's the first, you know, that's why, you know, your grandmother always told you that sometimes you have to look in the toilet to see what's going on, right? That's probably the first suggestion. Yeah.
Brief side note, that's happened to me before because I used to be an alcoholic. What that looks like is pale stool for the audience to know. It looks pale. It's not brown anymore. It's weird.
No. Just chicken color, right? It's like chicken paste. Yeah, I've seen that before also. It's that was from a sickness I remember as I was younger. So with biliary obstruction, you know, you get like bile reflux is how you labeled it, right? But I'm not really sure if there's gallstones in his bladder, which requires surgery. You know, after me doing ultrasounds and being so open about it, of course, everybody starts sending me their ultrasound results. So I've been learning a lot over the last 4 months. And in his case, you know, is there Crohn's disease present, you know, causes inflammation of the intestinal tract also. So he would really have to look at his causes. Now, from steroids, I've never seen anybody get biliary obstruction or gallstones from steroids. It has to do with inflammation in the intestinal tract, which can cause that. And that's maybe steroids can exacerbate that, oral steroids. You know, you take a ton of Adderall and, well, I'm going to assume that he didn't do that. But, you know, if you cause a lot of inflammation and maybe some androgen response in the intestinal tract, then, you know, biliary obstruction is a possibility, obviously. But if you stay on top of your taurine, which is a building block for bile acid, that's why we have the TUDCA, right? That's what the T stands for, the taurine activated UTCA. And that helps with bile acid excretion. So maybe he didn't have enough taurine. Maybe he depleted that. Maybe he wasn't on top of his TUDCA, or he has Crohn's disease or another form of irritable bowel syndrome that causes inflammation in the intestinal tract and just inhibits the bile acid from going into the intestinal tract. So my question to him would be, do you have gallstones, and how was your stool over the last X amount of years? And like I mentioned to you, Derek, is that somebody in his team, like these guys, they have a whole team. You have a nutritionist and a training partner and you know, and this, and maybe a guy to help him beat the drug tests. Yeah. Right. That would be my team. But they should have a nutritionist and do frequent blood work, and, you know, but, you know, maybe it's something that's like an underlying condition that you don't see in your blood work, and the stool is still the normal color, and then you just let it progress. You know, it's, you have to be very proactive.
So on that side, we dealt with the bile acid stuff, and I can talk more about the gastrointestinal stuff. So I don't know anything about the gastric issue, gastric emptying that he's referring to. I have no expertise on the stomach itself whatsoever, but I've studied extensively, of course, the GI tract, the microbiome, and all of that, having myself most likely developed Crohn's disease because of steroid use, most likely. I mean, there's a genetic predisposition. There was all of that kind of stuff. I had a lot of inflammation for a period of years. I quit smoking, which makes Crohn's disease more likely. In fact, smoking is protective for Crohn's disease, but actually it's protective for colitis, I think. But anyway, it's one of them. I did a lot of things and then I stopped. So anyway, I got Crohn's disease. And so I went through it. I visited the best gastroenterologist doctors in the US. And basically what I discovered is most of them don't know very much of what they're doing. It seems that the gastrointestinal system is one of the least understood systems in the body. They can take your fecal samples and you can have non-pathologic bacteria, total fine bacterial diversity. They don't really understand the bacterial species. They can do a colonoscopy, find no inflammation in your gastrointestinal tract, and yet see a high C-reactive protein. You can have mucus coming out of your gastrointestinal tract every day, and yet there's no inflammation when they do this so-called colonoscopy, because the measurement, the tools are not fit to the task. So what I'm trying to say is he may never have very great luck actually just getting advice from the doctor. And that's why when I made my first video on Crohn's disease, which was like 30 minutes long, the end of the video, the question was, what should I do about Crohn's disease, was basically, I don't know how I cured mine. Because I had like a couple of little incidents, like one day where I noticed something odd since then, but I lived in excruciating pain for 8 months. I mean, excruciating to the degree where my brain couldn't function. So I couldn't sit, I couldn't lay down, I couldn't walk properly. Like I would walk in circles from the pain for 8 months straight. It was unbelievable. And after 8 months, somehow, slowly, with the surgery and a few other things, because I had a complication, I had a precancerous growth. And after all of that, changing my lifestyle, everything changed slowly, but it wasn't one thing. So people have been emailing me since we last spoke, Derek, asking me like ideas, and I've given them many ideas, but it's an iterative approach of changing your diet, adding certain like short chain fatty acids, altering your inflammatory system, changing your daily behavior, and a great deal of things. What I think is probably happening is this guy's probably done what a lot of bodybuilders did, which is never listen to their body, don't know what they're doing with their diet, harm the GI tract with the allergic reactions and the constant feeding. The GI tract can only work for a few hours a day efficiently. We know that from Sachin Panda, the father of circadian rhythm research. And I highly recommend his book, The Circadian Code, which is only 200 pages long. Everybody can read it, and it's very fun to read. You realize the GI tract stops working when you widen that time. These guys, like for example, we'll talk about Dave Palumbo later. They've been eating 24 hours a day, so every 3 hours that thing is gonna cause malfunctioning eventually. And then you add on to that the inflammatory nature of their lifestyle. It's bound to happen. The weakest link will break first. For somebody, it may be rheumatoid arthritis. For somebody else, it may be their GI tract.
Yeah, I think, and even an elimination diet, I think, Derek, did you mention that in one of your videos about the elimination diet taking years to really do properly? Was it you or Leo?
I didn't mention time span, but I've talked about how that's, as far as I know, people with dysfunctional gastrointestinal issues and whatnot, they will often, have to deploy an elimination diet and then slowly reintroduce one thing at a time. But I have no idea how long it takes to rectify it. And if you have something like H. pylori, can you even do it without the antibiotics? Like, I don't know the answer to that. I would assume.
No, first of all, the first step is always to check your stool, your blood, and your breath. Check if there's any pathologic bacteria, nuke it, and then you repopulate, and of course your diet, and then you change your lifestyle. And then it's totally iterative at that point. So it takes a while, but for me, it was incredible. It was like a 3-month period where everything just reversed. And I went from being like, I never thought there was pain like that. I'm sure there's no more pain than what I experienced. Like you could cut my hand off, I would have been the same. It was ridiculous. I mean, and the worst part about it, honestly, because it's, where the area is. That's why it's so bad. Mine was located in a very bad area. So it was very painful. But you know what the worst part is? I've never used opiates. I mean, I've tried heroin experimentally once or twice just to know what it was like, because I try all drugs. I'm a person who's interested in subjective experiences, but I never tried opiates. I've never used an opiate, never almost. And then I had that excruciating pain. And the reason I never got into opiates is because I was afraid one day, what if I get an excruciating pain? I don't want to mess with that system. So I got in that pain, and then I go to the doctors, and of course they give you 5 milligram oxycodone pills, something like that, like 5 of them. But I'm in the pain for 8 months. I end up having to go to the emergency room and ask them. It's like you have to fight with these guys because there's a bunch of addicts out there. I mean, I only used maybe 20 pills the whole 8 months, but to get those 20 pills, I had to fight as if I was an addict. And it's really a shame. The war against opioids is actually hurting people with excruciating pain that can't, deal with it.
And I believe on the black market, they're incredibly expensive. I mean, I got it administered one time for my leg surgery, and I got withdrawals, because I've gone through my fair experimentation with recreational drugs in Holland as well. So I recognized it immediately when I had my surgery, and I can't even remember. I think it was morphine. Withdrawals for 3 days, constipation, all that stuff, It's in a single administration.
So how do you repopulate with good bacteria? Like you just do probiotic rich foods and you have supplementation, or like what?
Not foods. No. There are excellent probiotic formulations, top line ones. And this is what I look for. First of all, I go through third-party reviewed services, which you should always use, especially with probiotics, because a lot of them are not alive when they get to you. And you need a currently third reviewed one. Second of all, you want to know which bacteria strains you're looking for. And then don't be tricked don't go into CVS and find that expensive brand that has 3 species in it. You want it. One of the key factors of all the microbiome research is diversity of species. So you want diversity, and then you want some key species, which unfortunately I never remember the names and can't pronounce them. That's why I'm not being specific. But I use personally 5 probiotic refrigerated. These are my most expensive supplements every month. And if you stop using them for 2 months, your microbiome will revert to what it wants to be genetically with your environment. And by the way, there are single nucleotide polymorphisms that determine how much of a variety of your microbiome will have naturally. So you are actually, it's just like taking TRT, you're replacing,
Yeah.
Should have you check mine through the genome I sent you. That might Yeah, because that's something I'm like fairly unexplored, but I think I would like to learn more about for sure.
Yeah. So I had to reverse my digestive issues with eliminations diet and nuke it with all kinds of antibiotics, because I got a ton of digestive issues from a year of traveling, and then by the time I was in China, it was so bad that I was literally passing gas everywhere all the time. I walked the Chinese wall just passing gas. It was crazy. So yeah, it was crazy. 13 kilometers of the Chinese wall, just the whole time. I didn't even have breakfast. I just went there on an empty stomach. Yeah, disgusting. So by the time I came home, and then I went to Mongolia, which is all dairy products. So that was even worse. I think I was farting more than the horse. So by the time I came back, I had to do an elimination diet. And then I did so many things like fasting. That's the first time I fasted. And I was terrible.
I get this picture of the Mongolian with the wall, and then he goes the Chinese wall, and then goes to Mongolia.
Go to Mongolia, 18 days on a horse to explore the Tsatan reindeer herders, just passing gas all the way through. It was horrible. So I came back home, did my fast, and then after a while I got so upset with this elimination diet that wasn't working, FODMAP diet, that I got every antibiotic, because there was no information on this, and just took them all for 3 weeks straight. And then my digestion was even worse. And then I went back on a FODMAP diet, elimination diet, and I repopulated with raw food. So everything raw, even the chicken. Even the chicken, which I boiled the outside. Yeah, I got it from an organic farmer, so there's no risk of salmonella. And that's how I was able to repopulate, but I still have to follow a FODMAP diet.
Wait, no risk of salmonella because it's an organic farm? Why would you think that?
That's what they told me at the time. This is like 10 years ago.
There's total risk, but it's okay. It worked out.
Right. Thank God. It worked out. So it's but it took me a long time to get that under control. We're talking about years, and I still have an extensive list of doing this, maybe 2 or 3 year elimination diet of foods that I can eat and can't eat. But there's still food coming in and out of this list. Like I was allergic for eggs for a while, gave me gas, and then I had to eliminate it for 6 months. And now I can eat it just fine. It just, the quantity as well. And it's the issue with bodybuilder. We'll always eat the same food, chicken, broccoli.
Like in general, if you have to ask what are the symptoms of like GI distress, you probably don't have it. Is that fair to say? Because like for me, I'm trying to think about
absolutely. No, absolutely. Oh, well, except one thing. This is the key sign, huh? If you have liquid stools for a while and it doesn't bother you, but they're liquid because you're a tough guy and you don't think about it, that's what I was doing. 3 years on steroids, liquid stools, never thought about it. Tough guy, I don't talk about that stuff.
Yeah, right.
Then I got Crohn's disease.
Your power through,
I always have followers and stuff talk about, their GI issues and stuff. And for me, I've always wondered, like, I try to have a good diet, but it's not always dialed in. Then I wonder, do I have, maybe some underlying issue too? But it's not like I have brutal distension. Stools are always solid. I don't have anything that really makes it seem like it, but I'm still always trying to optimize. So I was wondering if there could be some sort of underlying sign that's not like a blatant symptom, because it seems like everyone knows pretty obviously when they have a problem.
Yeah. You could still have H. pylori, by the way, but that has nothing to do with that, because that could still just be there. But
if you're untraveled, is that still likely though?
No, unlikely.
Like if I'm in Canada pretty much my whole life, is it likely that I have H. pylori?
I don't even think it lives in Canada. It might not. It's cold. It's cold.
What if you're intimate with a girl that has been traveling a lot? Is that possible to, that?
It absolutely is, and I know someone it just happened to. So it absolutely, yes, I just happened. Yeah. Hey, can I mention something? Oh, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so Derek, we should go into the pickup artist topic at one point.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're active, then you never know what that mouth has been, that saliva has been. You always
the times I was the most sick ever were during the pickup phases. Like I was like perpetually getting colds and shit all the time. It was just you would have like 1 or 2 days that you'd be like perfectly healthy, and then boom, you get sick again all the time.
Yeah, because you were, 4 or 5 girl rotation or something.
Because you guys are making out with a bunch of girls. That's what pickup artists do. They make out with 30 girls. They don't sleep with anybody. They go around, make out in clubs, and then they go home. Not you guys. I'm saying the mystery method guys, mystery and those guys. I don't think they landed that many chicks. It was a lot of.
What they do is they will get a number and videotape it, and then tell everyone nothing and make it be implied that they got laid, when in reality they actually got no high quality women ever. Maybe they got some, but I mean, like in general, I think it's, pretty obvious. Some of the guys, like back in the day, I used to see, there's this big channel called Simple Pickup, and I don't know if you guys have seen them, but anyways, it was like these 3 like very average looking guys who would go around and do like ridiculous pickups in order to show how it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter whatever. Nothing matters except if you have like game and you're willing to go talk to girls. And they would go up to girls, videotape it, get numbers. But oftentimes they would never explain how the likelihood that this is actually turned into something thereafter, like the amount of numbers you get that actually turn into first dates, that actually turn into lays, that actually turn into, whatever, a rotation, a relationship, whatever it is. It's like it gets chopped down by like 10% at least, like every step of the way, to the point where most of your numbers turn into nothing, and they never explain that. So it's like a lot of these pickup guys, you think if you've never done this stuff, you don't realize that a lot of it is just for show, and they're not, like a master that's getting every single one of these chicks' numbers. Like I would have hundreds of numbers that turn into nothing all the time. I think it's very common.
Isn't the whole idea of pickup artist stuff that you don't get the number, but you still get laid? Where you just say, this was great, I'll see you next time, That I thought that was the whole point. You get a girl home on the first night.
If you were like a nightclub guy, then I guess, it wouldn't matter to get the number, because you try and get them to your place the same night. Right. But for me, that was like the worst strategy for me. You go like downtown, try and pick up a chick, coordinate separating her from her friends, going all the way home 30 minutes away, making sure it's all planned out accordingly. She might be, slightly intoxicated. Like it's just a terrible way to go about doing it. So I would get numbers during the day or in online dating, set up a date as quick as possible on the first date, then you move the needle kind of thing. But I would never, like, night game was my least favorite of all.
I like that one. It was like in and out in 30 minutes.
Yeah, I guess. But it was like,
this is Thailand, guys, so it's a little bit different than the Western world.
I would never drink and do drugs though. So it was like being in a night setting where it's all kind of like nonverbal communication. You can't actually have a conversation or anything. It wasn't my wheelhouse. I was better at differentiating myself by actually having the balls to go up to girls in like the daytime in some setting that they would otherwise not be expecting to get hit on, or, just being efficient with online dating and whatnot. So the night game thing, it wasn't really it was my least favorite. And even when I was a bouncer, it was still my least favorite, even though it was literally my job to be there talking to them.
So I read Neil Strauss's book when it was published. I remember it hitting Virgin bookstores, and I was living in Qatar at the time, of all places. And I picked up the book immediately. read it. Although actually, I was the first guy in my grade. I know I'm a nerd, and I'm clearly a nerd, and I'm a nerd at heart, and I'm an introvert at heart. But weirdly, oddly, I got bullied weirdly in 7th and 8th grade, so I became a delinquent in high school. So I was the tough guy in high school, and the guy who got expelled, and that kind of thing. So I was the first guy to get with a girl, and the first guy to have a girlfriend, all that. So I never really had but I grew up without a mother, and I grew up without sisters, and I never had a female influence in my childhood. So I didn't really understand women, right? For me, when I read the book, it was the book was more confusing than anything else for me, because I was like, I'm first of all, the peacocking thing, it hit me though. I realized something I was doing without realizing it. But other than that game of negging, also the negging I realized I was doing without realizing it. So it made me somewhat conscious of what I was doing. But my view was more like your friend Chris's. So Chris, you were describing that the way you just described pickup art is the opposite of what Chris was, which is that they're saying you can just do this magic with your words, NLP, which doesn't work, that kind of neuro-linguistic programming. And Chris was saying it's not about that. It's about what you are and what you project, the image you project, right? Am I summarizing it all?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the guys actually in the book, Chris used to go out and do pickup with. He wasn't he wasn't one of the main guys in that circle with, Mystery, Neil, RSD Tyler, those kind of guys. He would hang out with them though, and he lived in some pickup mansion thing and did all the shit and tried the peacocking and everything. And he realized that he was accidentally kind of coming across as a homosexual to women. That's what he thought he was doing. And then he was like, what the fuck am I doing? So he decided to just start talking to girls like humans and just, develop as you go. And the first, however many times you crash and burn because you don't have a script like Mystery, where it's you're in attraction phase 1. So you have to do a neg right now. And then you have to, tell her some fake story that you've said 30,000 times to DHV. And then from there you go into seduction stage, whatever. And then within 2 hours, she will be sleeping with you. It's not a math question. It doesn't work like that. But yeah, I would literally, he did this too. But when I first started and I read the game, I had a piece of paper with every fucking thing you need to do in my jeans pocket that I would read before I go and be okay, I need to say this, and then I need to do that, and then I need to do this. But it doesn't really work, as you would find out if you did that shit. It is you basically learn how to become an actor who's memorized stuff, but you don't actually learn game because you never develop any kind of conversation skills when you're just reading or memorizing something. So I would,
which is why they don't have relationships, right? Also, why they can't continue it sometimes, right?
I would imagine so, yeah. So Chris, he started doing the just talking to people, and eventually you develop such a lack of approach anxiety to the point that you can talk to hot women like you're talking to, you guys right now. There's no anxiety whatsoever. And then you just become good at talking, you don't sound like you're trying too hard. You don't sound like you're trying to prove something. You don't sound like you're trying to, pull a fast one, which is literally what the Mystery method is. It's trying to make her feel like shit a little bit, indirectly without her noticing. Boost yourself up and make it seem like you're the sick guy. And so I just very much kind of I don't know what the word is, aligned with the stuff Chris did, and it really resonated with me. That's the word. And just started throwing myself into the fire, and I got, it's called when you blow out the set, is when you just fucking implode and don't even know what to say and whatnot. Did that many times, but eventually you just actually learn how to talk. And then through hundreds of approaches, you get good at it. And then after a while, you start to actually be able to get numbers. And then after that, many times you get dates after that. And then after that, you actually start getting laid, and then blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you're actually a full blown, functioning human who's getting women.
The weird thing is I've never in my whole life approached a woman till today. And so I never learned that. So right now, Derek, I have still the same problem you have, I guess, or not you have, but had as a kid, or pickup artists had, or wanted to have, or not wanted to have, had, which is that I'm, I'm obviously scared of rejection, right? So I've never approached any woman in my whole life because of that reason. But instead, I think I didn't develop something as potent as what Chris did, and because maybe mine worked quicker. But what I sort of realized on my own was subconsciously was this: women would recognize who they would okay, this is going to be very sexist, guys, and I'm not sexist. I'm married. I love my wife. My wife is pregnant with a daughter. I love women. I'm just explaining this for the 18-year-old guys that may be insecure, 17-year-old guys that are insecure, that want to be confident with a woman. So from that perspective, I'm going to be a little bit like, I'm going to stereotype women a little bit. So generally what I noticed was this. Women would sense when you go out in a group with your male friends or even with your female friends, what your power position was in that group. If your male friends looked up to you, they sense that. You could be as ugly as me. I'm not a good looking fellow. And you stand there and your friends respect you. You lead. You tell people where we're going to go, what we're going to do. People sense that. They're drawn to that. If you are happy, if you're enjoying yourself, you're having a good time, people are drawn to that. They come to you. They float to you. If you're powerful, that is the greatest aphrodisiac of all. And now power, when you get a little bit older, not when you're 17, 18. When I was 17, 18, power used to be like, because it was back in the day, it used to be like muscle. Girls liked muscle. That in Derek's time, I think that was already dead a little bit, but maybe not totally. But now it's in California, it's dead. But power, when you get over, say 20, 22, once girls graduate from college, power is money. They see money. So sometimes that's what power is. And power can also be other things also. So, and also they look at how women treat you. So for example, for me, once I got it, even in college, once I got into a very good school, by the third year, girls started to realize I was going somewhere with my life. I couldn't get girls off me. It was hard. At Carnegie Mellon, I remember I used to be a nerd. I mean, I wouldn't leave my house. I had this girl. Once I did a project with a girl in the project. Like we had a project together. She wouldn't leave me alone. She would call me every week, drunk, trying to get into my apartment, and I would never let her because I was like a eunuch. The whole 2 years I did nothing. I just studied. I wouldn't see anyone. But I would go back to Dubai and bang everyone for like 3 weeks, and then go back and study. No, that's what I would do. I would hook them up every 6 months. They would be all organized, and then I'd go there, bang everybody, and then go back. So
swipe.
And when but the thing is, then when I graduated from college, and I was poor all of college. I used to take the bus. In grad school, I used to work 2 jobs. I lived outside London. So I wanted to do a PhD, but I wanted money. And at the time, my mother had cancer and stuff. So I really wanted to get a high paying job. So I got a private job in private equity. I got a job in private equity in Abu Dhabi. My salary was really high. First 6 months, I saved the whole thing. I lived like I paid nothing. I was so stingy because I was poor for so long. Then I accumulated a lot of money. So what did I do? 6 months later, I was like, damn, I'm not accumulating enough money to be building an empire or anything. I'm just making a lot of money. So I went into a store, bought a 911 Turbo S, red interior, red exterior, and I started driving the Turbo. And you pull up in any club, and every girl will look at you. You don't need to talk to anybody. You can go up to the girl and say, would you like to come with me? And she'll just come. So all I'm trying to say to you guys is, instead of looking just at your insecurities, if you build your own happiness, I'm not pro materialism. I think the girls you'll get from your 911 Turbo S will be not the girls you want, by the way. And they weren't. They were actually girls that can break your heart and really harm you and really, but if you build your own happiness and build yourself up and you're happy and you're confident and you're strong, they'll come to you. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree on everything.
I agree with a lot of this stuff, but the coming to you thing, I don't agree with at all.
No, it's not a good idea. It's
in the Western world.
Yeah,
in the Western world, unless you're famous and the girls are DMing you, because that's sort of their pussy way of approaching guys now. If you're just out and about, girls are not going to.
No, I'm saying with Tinder. Sorry, with Tinder. I'm saying, no, I'm considering Tinder because in Dubai, I never approached a girl. But in the US, when I've lived here for 6 years, 7 years or so in a row, before I met Lucy, I was on Tinder and I was damn successful. So I dated one of the most beautiful girls for sure in LA. She's a Ukrainian oligarch's daughter, billionaire. Unbelievable woman. I dated for 1.5 years before. Every guy I ever went to would be staring at her. What's she doing with this guy? Everywhere. And that was off Tinder. I had 6,000 matches before I closed my Tinder. One of the things I help with my clients is actually to tell them how to deal with Tinder, how to optimize your profile, how to, respond to them, and then the most important thing is to try to narrow them down. I think nobody should even approach people in person anymore with Tinder and other apps there, because you can get volume and then save time. Most of the girls are already there.
It's definitely more efficient. And I agree that if you have good enough pictures and a good enough profile, then you can leverage your time and just, use that. But in addition, I think developing character through being able to approach people in real life is definitely underrated. And it's more guys lean on social media apps because they have no personality and or haven't developed anything through throwing themselves into the fire. They become way too handicapped by only being on social media apps and shit. And then if a guy like me is able to walk up to some chick in real life, I'm the only guy out of like 1,000 people who's even has the balls to talk to her in real life. So it's an easy way to set yourself apart now. I'm not saying you need to do it from a time efficiency standpoint. Online dating makes so much sense, but no guys are able to talk to girls now. And if you're one of those guys who's in the 90% that is going to get no results online, you need to be able to talk to girls because it's going to be the 10% top guys online who are getting all the chicks.
But you know what the weird thing is, like with most of the women nowadays, because they go through these apps. No, but they're also shy. They're incredibly shy and anxious. So when you go talk with them, they stumble over their own words. Whereas, where I come from, I never used these Tinder apps or did online dating. I just went out and went talk to people. And as you do that more often, you get better, and then you find out things that work a little bit, like dressing well or looking like money, or you might have to show that you pretend that you have a little bit more money than you actually have, until you get them to your place, and then they see what your condo is really like. But yeah, when you're younger, you don't have so much money, right? And so I've been with my wife for 8 years, so I never got on Tinder. I met my wife in the good old fashioned way in the gym. And that's, then social presence and social dynamics, how you compare to other men, that dynamic really plays into part, like what Leo mentioned, is how your ranking amongst the other men, your financial security and your looks, of course, that highly contributes, to how you can approach girls. But I never went online, even, to start messaging girls on MySpace or High Five or
no, that
Facebook.
was different. Yeah,
never
that was different.
Did that. Yeah.
Because back then it was different. The people that would go to those apps were people who selectively, they were like people who were having issues. So now it's not the case everywhere in the world. Like in Dubai, Tinder sucks. Like it's weird there. But here and in London, for example, I know, and I assume in Canada also, but I have a lot of points about what you said, Derek. I have a lot of, but number one, so what I meant before was this. I meant like I would go to parties, or I would go to clubs, or I would go, or my friends would approach me. It wasn't that I would go to a bar and a girl would walk across the bar and come to me. No, those are weird. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like friends would come out with us. I would meet a girl, like some guys would bring girls out, and every single time the girls would come to me. Like all my friends were better looking than me. Everyone was. Every single time we went out, sometimes their girlfriends would try to sleep with me. That would always happen to me, dude, for years in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And then, but there's more things. So, and then also I wanted to, you have a comment on that one?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, that sounds great. And I'm sure all of us would love to be in that situation, but 99% of us, that's never going to happen for us. So you need to be able to go up to chicks and talk to them.
That might be true. But I feel like if someone, like another thing that I didn't mention is also like ability to speak about subjects you're passionate about, that you're intelligent about. Like if you have nothing to say, dude, no chick wants to be with a guy that doesn't have a brain, has nothing to say. But if you're passionate about your life, about something that you have to talk about, it's a lot of elements to it. Another thing is we were talking earlier about like sort of just banging chicks. So I mentioned like the chicks that you'll get from the Porsche won't be the chicks you want to marry. But if you just want to bang chicks, that's the fastest way, dude. You could just wait till you finish college, go to Goldman Sachs, like a lot of my friends did from undergrad, 175,000 started salary. You'll bang every chick you go to New York, you can finish it all. You don't need to do it in college.
All of your situations are like top 1% guys that are earners and stuff. Like, no, dude, even when I was 21, 22, I had like $100 in my bank account, could barely afford the fucking testosterone I was using, was going on dates that cost $5. That's what I was doing at 21, 22. And that's when I got it all out of my system. And there's no way, if you made me wait till like 24, 25 to afford a Porsche, it would have never happened, dude. So I think this is like, maybe where you live, it's a bit different, where you in Dubai, but Western, my
friends in New York were like that too, because my like cohort from Carnegie Mellon, like a lot of them went to investment banking, and those guys were doing the same thing I was.
It would
So they were
mentally
partying
fuck
every
you up
weekend.
to skip your early 20s, though, trying to get rich and then try and relive it in your late 20s, early 30s once you've accumulated the wealth.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And that screws you up and helps you in some ways. So my friends who were frat guys in college, partied all the time, slept with all the girls, their jobs suck. And their careers were really bad in their 20s. For me, I got 4.0 the last 2 years of Carnegie Mellon, 4.0. Never got below 100%, like A. We don't have A pluses there. So I had no life. I was a nerd, loser, like weird, by myself. Graduated. Went to grad school, then got a job, and then partied. So I didn't do great in my job. I quit my job after 2.5 years. I wasn't interested, but I had a lot more fun than they did in undergrad, I think. I'm not sure though. It's a different lifestyle because in undergrad,
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think you still need to get this phase out of your system before you settle down and get married. Because if you don't do that, and then you get married, and then you start to make good money, that's where all the infidelity is coming from in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of guys don't have game, they don't have money, they don't talk with chicks, and they go through that phase where you get so jaded that you don't even want to think about women anymore because you're so over it. And then you meet the love of your life, But a lot of guys, they don't go through this period. And then they get financially successful, let's say their late 30s, 40s, 50s. And they're like, oh, man, I got to catch up. And I see that happen in Thailand all the time. These guys come here, they're loaded with money, but they have no game because they never learned it. And they got married along the way. But they're, now they're like, oh, I have money, I can do whatever I want. And I finally have that power and social status, a social hierarchy.
And they want to relive the youth they didn't have, and then they start cheating on their wife and doing all the shit. So this is why I would argue the guys who become like man whores in their early 20s, you might look at them down on them like, oh, look at this guy. He's just like, doesn't give a shit about anything. He's just like this, he's so disrespectful of women and blah, blah, blah. But I think you're developing the mental state to be able to tolerate all the stuff in later life and then actually be able to set yourself up for an emotionally healthy relationship. How contradictory that sounds, I understand. But to me, that's how I perceived it.
100%. And you need to go through that period where you're just so tired of women that you're not even open to the idea of a relationship. And then you find a person that you can actually build a friendship up with first and get to know. And then over 6 months or whatever period you take to get to know this person, like, you know what? I can see myself with this girl.
So I have
never started a relationship through a friendship ever.
Personally. Yeah. I have.
Oh, really?
I'm not really friends with chicks at all, to be honest. Like I'll talk.
I wasn't either until I met my wife, but I respect her highly, and it was interesting to talk with her. And then you build that over time, and then after a while, you try your chances, and it's like, hey, let's go for that coffee. Let's go for a coffee.
Okay, I want to write that one down so I didn't forget to comment on it. But we're talking about something so cool. So this is such an interesting. I have ideas about this. So I always felt like, and for me, when I was younger, it's like I had something to prove when I was trying to. It was like you're trying to. I know this sounds horrible, also and sexist, but it was almost like you felt like you were trying to access something or conquer something. But really, what it was is that I was attaching my self-esteem to other women. I don't know why, to women of all things, but I was taking my self-esteem and attaching it to something that I don't believe I deserve, and then hoping I get it or trying to get it. Yeah. And every single time, though, this is the weird part that Derek's talking about, every single time I got it, I got a little bit of that esteem back. And eventually, like when I mentioned that Ukrainian girl who first time, there were two girls that I dated that were just, it was crazy. One was in Dubai. I swear she's the most beautiful girl in Dubai. And my friends in Dubai, one day they'll find this channel, they don't know about it, they'll agree and comment below. She was notorious. She was crazy. And then the Ukrainian one was crazy too. They were both 1 year long. After those, something happened to me inside where a beautiful face could come to me and I'd be like, who are you? Talk to me. It didn't hit me anymore.
Yeah. And I can almost guarantee if you met that Ukrainian bombshell or whatever, when you had no experience, you would have got devastated. You would have
not just that,
absolutely destroyed when she left. 100%.
Oh, that's what I mean. Exactly. Yeah. So no, she didn't leave, by the way. I left her. Yeah. Just to let you know. But no, I'm saying in a good point.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But what I was going to say is exactly your point, which was what I was going to continue with, which is that I could have never learned to be to really be in a good relationship and a healthy relationship until I internalized my self-esteem. Like now I don't depend. There's never any, I had so many toxic relationships. Toxic relationships happen for me when my self-esteem is in the other person, theirs is in mine, and potentially it can go negative sometimes. With me and Lucy, we both have our self-esteem within each other, and it is truly a selfless love for the other person. And I feel complete with myself, and Lucy just enriches my life so much. But I don't feel nothing missing within myself. And I always try to tell my clients, like, if you feel complete within your own life, that's the time you'll be healthy to have a good relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of guys do the traditional thing, and they try and most people just, they sleep with like a handful of girls in their whole life. They go from like serial relationship to the next serial relationship over and over. And then they get married, and, they often have the regret in the back of their head. And I think you just got to knock that out when you are able to do it with $0 in your bank account. And you can be young and enjoy yourself, and there's no pressure on you to, support a family or do this or that. It's good to just get out of your system, become emotionally secure in the fact that, if you lose a chick, you can get another one as good as her again in a reasonably quick time frame. Nothing really like holds you back from, you're not going to get absolutely devastated if a chick ends up leaving you. This kind of stuff is just like good to build up in terms of becoming emotionally healthy, I think, because otherwise you set yourself up.
And during this time, you're trying to figure out who you are as a person as well. And that takes a while, also. So you might sample different kinds of women along the way, so like this one I'll try, maybe not again, a little bit through an experimentation phase and see what kind of woman matches well with you. And you need to sample, a decent amount of women before you get to a place where you know exactly what you want. And then you just have to find the right person. But I found my wife when I was 30, and I sampled plenty before that time. And I never settled down. I never felt like settling down. I was like, okay, you have your fun for a couple dates and that's it. And then I would move on, because I would never find somebody that I would want it to relax with. I had relationships before, but they never lasted more than a couple months, because I knew in my heart that this person is not going to be my partner forever, until I met my wife. And then I knew within 2 weeks.
You're a very decisive person, huh?
Yeah. Well, listen, we of course we knew each other already, through the gym. It would go out, and I coached her a little bit before we got into a relationship. And then after a while, I asked her, "You want to be in a relationship, and do you want to move in? Let's speed up this process. I'm 30. I don't want to waste time." So she moved in within 2 days of getting into a relationship. Never looked back, because I knew what I wanted.
I knew
exactly what I wanted, and I found it, and I didn't look back.
I'm very happy, and she's wonderful, your wife, really. We're both very lucky. I mean, really, really lucky. And that's something, Derek, because you're saying like you can find a girl as good as. The thing is, at some point, and because you're younger, Derek, you haven't probably faced this huge problem, insurmountable problem that I faced later in my late 20s. It hit me, which is that finding a lady, a partner, a life partner that you relate to. By the way, there's not a lot of clips in this, but that you relate to emotionally. We'll get to some stuff. That you relate to emotionally, intellectually, and ethically. That last part, ethically. I'm talking about people who will sacrifice for morals, sacrifice for their friends. I grew up without really a family, but when I was 11 years old, I was alone at home. I had no father, no mother. I just had a maid at the house. So for me, my friends were always my family. So to me, when I say someone's and you've already seen weird stuff from me, like what I do for people I barely know. So like my friends back home, like I really would die for them. So I always wanted someone like that as a partner. And Lucy is like that. I trust Lucy. Like it's the greatest gift I've ever had in my life. I would give up my not only my left arm, I would give up any money for the rest of my life to have her for the rest of my life. I mean it, that's how gifted I am. It's so hard to find. I could never replace Lucy. It's never. There's nobody like that. Nobody. I have the
same feeling.
I don't know how I got lucky.
And until you have that feeling, you don't settle down. And some guys will never reach that feeling, unfortunately. But I think it's also, you need to go through a period where you sample a lot of women, to see which one matches with you and what kind of women find you attractive. And then at one point you come to a conclusion like, oh, this is the perfect woman for me. And you just go through the roller coaster really, really fast.
And there used to be a mathematical formula. Actually, in the 50s, there were some mathematicians who were trying to make a formula for when to decide to marry a woman. Of course, it was the 1950s at the time. So but anyway, so it's a little faux pas. But they said you should date 7 women. That was the conclusion. And after the 7th woman, the first one you meet that's better than the rest of the 7, you should marry. That was the conclusion. Another thing I wanted to bring up also is that for at least 5 years of my life, I had 2 girlfriends at once that knew about each other and that we used to go out together, including in LA. God. So in LA, I had 2 girlfriends at the same time, and we used to go out always together and live together in the same apartment. And back home, I also had 2 girlfriends in my first 2 years of university, or my first year of university. I had 2 girlfriends. One was a princess too, at the same time.
They knew about each other?
Yes. I made them meet. Those ones I made them meet like a couple of times, but the ones in America were friends.
You made them meet. That's like the last fucking thing I would think you'd want to do.
Yeah, I asked them to meet because I was planning.
Planning to break up with both of them at the same time.
I accomplished a lot of stuff in those days. I used my brain for evil, I think. But anyway,
I had like a 4 or 5 girl rotation, but they didn't know.
About
each other.
I never lied. No, I hate that. Yeah.
But we were into a relationship, so I think it was okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Of course. Yeah.
You're dating a couple girls and they come in and come out. And then, let's go to the intelligent content.
Let's get to some. First of all, did you guys see the Dave? You asked me, Steve. Did you see the Dave podcast? What happened?
Yeah, that was the last episode. That was the last episode I watched of the RX Muscle Show. It was horrible. I mean, like in the beginning it was interesting, right? You talk about the EPO and the growth factors and all that stuff, and then suddenly Dave starts to corner you with questions about amine, which we all know is not, doesn't have the best reputation. I coached many of his old athletes that left disgruntled.
Oh, really?
Many of his old clients, that left no contact and horrible drug advice and didn't care about their health and that kind of stuff. And then you have to reset them, into a better state of health. And then I heard your stories. So it was very disrespectful just to corner you and show you. He gets you on to talk about, new kinds of, performance enhancing drugs and information in the industry. And then like, hey, by the way, about amine. Yeah. And you stood up for yourself.
Oh, no, but 100%. before that, he asked me, Leo, I hear that by the way, I had talked to Palumbo on the phone the night before. Okay, for like 30 minutes. So he says randomly on the video, by the way, Leo, I heard you were 220 pounds, huh? And I said, yeah. And he said, and by the way, Palumbo is friends with Scott Mendelson, who's a close friend of mine, seen me bent over row 405, knows how strong I am. You could just ask him if he was really curious. On the thing says, you have a picture? I think he's hoping I don't have a picture. I said, well, I guess there's a picture somewhere. There's on YouTube, on Instagram, but it's like, I wasn't at my biggest, of course, and I was never a bodybuilder, and I was never big, but I was very strong, but not athlete strong. Just
those shoulders were very
strong for a weak guy, but I was strong. It's not, you don't tell me I didn't lift any weights, for God's sake. So the guy's like, you're 200, show me the picture. So that was fine. But then right after that, he tells me, apologize to Amin. I'm like, the day before, he asked Lenny to apologize to some guy. So I was shocked. Yeah. After the thing happened, I called him. I yelled at him on the phone. I told him, I told him, Palumbo, I thought of you like an uncle, like a mentor. Like I've been sitting behind your back, defending you. Literally the day before he did this, I posted a video defending him again when Bob Chick attacked him with leaves. I was like, dude, do you know how much, like, I love you. Like, why would you do this? What were you trying to do? And it was like, I'm a journalist. I had to surprise you and all this. And 20 minutes later, he tells me, Roger Stone and Amin cornered me. I had to do it. I don't know what. So I don't know. I didn't know what to think about it. Honestly, I got very disappointed. I mean, remember the time, Derek, he made this turkesterone video about one of your supplements. And I messaged Derek. I said, Derek, I swear he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know it's your product. And I messaged the Palumbo. I told him, that this is Derek's product and you don't know what you're talking about in the video and you shouldn't do this. He said, I had no idea. People have been asking me about it, just like he did with me. People have been asking me. Yeah. No one's asking you, dude. You're watching our videos. Yeah. All right. So let's get into something I wanted to talk about. So today I got, honestly, we were preparing a lot of topics for the guys, a lot of videos to discuss. And I prepared one topic, but got into a rabbit hole that took me 6 hours. So I'm not going to discuss it all with you guys. But what I'm going to do is, for the audience that wants to see the notes, right after this video, I'm going to go edit my notes on thyroid cancer and autoimmune thyroid disease. I have over 60 probably citations, each one with a bullet point. You can open the papers. I will put a blog post on my blog called Thyroid Something for you guys to reference. But so I'm not going to go through all the details. But before we do, I discovered some very odd things. Now I didn't want to mention this before I went on Palumbo's show. I wanted to warn him, man, you can't sleep 3 hours every day. Your immune system will not be vigilant. You'll get cancer. And you took growth hormone for many years. It's very dangerous. When I told him this,
let me interject something. Palumbo also mentioned many, many times, never take T4 with your growth hormone. So you can clarify that a little bit later on.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
It's the inactive version. You don't need it. Just take T3.
Exactly. So the problem is that he also said in the video, but I was so polite because he didn't attack me yet. He said that cancers don't metabolize anaerobic. He said they only metabolize one, anaerobic or aerobic. That's not true. Cancer is metabolized through both. I just told him I'm not an expert. I don't know why. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about cancer, but everybody knows that about cancer. For God's sake, if you have cancer, you should know that. But what happened was this. So the last couple of years, I was a fan of Palumbo's channel. And I liked him. And I used to sit with Lucy sometime, put him on the TV, and she gets annoyed when I put this stuff on the TV. But she used to tell me, why this guy always, because we used to see him in a grocery store grabbing little candy bars and giving them to his kids. And she was always telling me, isn't he that dietitian? He's a nutritionist. Why is he giving these processed foods to his kids? And I told him, no, yeah, apparently, because he would say on the show shamelessly, I want to shut them up. They're so loud. So I just give them candy bars and processed foods and all that. And so I started thinking.
Every parent knows that.
Yeah, so I started thinking, wait a minute, did Palumbo give himself thyroid cancer? So this is what I started thinking about. Number one, I wanted to mention that Tony Huge, Rich Piana, Chris Aceto have all had melanomas. And I noticed that before, and I said, is there a reason that so many bodybuilders that have taken growth hormone, all this stuff, get melanomas? I researched, melanoma is the number one cancer that is reactive to IGF-1. One of the top 3, at least. I think it's number 1. It's very reactive to IGF-1. That's the first thing. The second thing I noticed is, of course, George Farah got colon cancer. Of course, I have Crohn's disease. I'm deathly afraid of colon cancer. As I said, I had a precancerous growth. It's called the fistula. I had to have it removed. Louis XIV, the Sun King of France, also had the same disease and the same fistula, unfortunately. I can't imagine how excruciating his surgery was. Imagine that. Anyway, so I asked myself, am I next? I smoked for 15 years. Chain smoke. Nobody ever smoked as many cigarettes as me. It was disgusting.
Really? I had no idea.
Oh, I was horrible. And I ate protein thinking like it's healthy. I ate protein like I would not be lifting for 5 years and I'd be eating protein like 300 grams a day. I was just stupid stuff.
You basically did like a 180, right? You went in this direction for part of your life and then the other direction. Yeah, same here, man. I made so much stuff, much stupid stuff that I'm embarrassed about, I made so many mistakes early on, man.
We're very similar, actually. We both lived like difficult lives, and then
we should talk about our parents a little bit in a podcast, you and me. We're not going to bore Derek with this. Exactly. We're not going to bore Derek with that stuff.
So I tried to summarize it really quickly. What I can gather is from the ages of 22 to 40, Palumbo did a couple of things that were probably very bad for future thyroid cancer growth or any cancer growth. Number one, he took growth hormone for it seems, according to him, 20 years. He says not more than 8 units of growth hormone, but he developed acromegaly. That was what Nasser Sambati famously called him, and it's in the bodybuilding.com website, still the articles describing his acromegaly. He has giganticism. That's what that face is. If you Google acromegaly, you'll still see he still has it. The reason is he started growth hormone so early. He was 21, 22 abusing it. So he actually got giganticism properly. So you see his hand.
I met Dave in Holland after FIBO, and then I recognized him on the street. And then the first thing that came to my mind, man, this head is so big. Head really like this big, and he's short. He's like shorter than I am. I'm 5'9", but he came to here. Dave Palumbo, I said, we met somewhere in Amsterdam. And then I shook his hand, and I saw his hand. Like, man, it's big, and his head is so big. But this is almost 10 years ago. But that's the first thing I remember. Then he was still on, some sort of hormone replacement. So. Yeah.
But Dave
vouch for the acromegaly.
Yeah, Dave says he had originally large feet and hands, but in either case, he also used insulin as he always says, and of course, insulin, by the way, at high doses, agonizes the IGF-1 receptor. So both growth hormone and IGF-1 both growth hormone and insulin increase IGF-1. What IGF-1 does, it potentiates the mitogenic effects of thyroid stimulating hormone. IGF-1 makes thyroid stimulating hormone grow the thyroid more than it would naturally. And thyroid stimulating hormone grows the thyroid. Number one, I'll talk more about the science later. But the third thing he did was he didn't miss a meal, he says, for more than 4 hours for all those years because he would wake up in the middle of the night. So he had no cell apoptosis, no autophagy. So anything building up there stayed. His body wasn't vigilant to kill cells. That's the first problem. Then, okay, and as I said, he developed acromegaly. He likely got a goiter. I don't know if you notice his voice is very odd. He had a weird neck. 70+% of people with acromegaly have goiters. I have some studies. They'll be on the.
Oh, really?
70% have goiters. They're not visible. They're not all visible when you have a goiter. Is just an enlarged thyroid. You can't always see it.
But that's from iodine deficiency, right?
No. That's from hyperplasia. That could come from iodine deficiency because your thyroid can't function, so it grows.
Yeah.
See what I mean? I figured it out finally.
Hormone, right? It's so high.
We're gonna.
The TSH thing you mentioned, how it going up, kind of helping to cause enlargement and whatnot, and stimulating the growth of it. Would that be something you could then make an argument to attenuate that by taking thyroid replacement, or is that just like because that would crash your TSH to zero?
So we should definitely talk about that. But before we do, let's just really quick. I'm so sorry. I just want to really quickly summarize how he got there really quickly, and then we'll talk about thyroid. So he developed acromegaly, likely had a goiter. 70+% of them have it. He had the voice changes, so something was going on other than the androgenicity. Then he probably developed nodules. So what are the nodules? First, the thyroid grows. And then it develops these tiny little tumors. They're just tumors, benign tumors. They're called nodules. He says 1 or 2 nodules. So he probably developed nodules. Now, 78%, not 70, 78% of people with acromegaly have nodules. All right, so that's there also. Now, we know he had acromegaly. We know he was on high-dose growth hormone for a very long time. We know Dallas McCarver had thyroid cancer. That's the other reason I'm talking about this. It's not because of Palumbo, because he upset me. I was really curious. I want to know, why do people get thyroid cancer when they're bodybuilders? Okay, so then the next thing I noticed is this. From the age of 40 to 50, he ate processed foods. He ate nitrates specifically from his junk. And we're going to talk in a little bit why nitrates are weirdly bad for the thyroid. I was shocked today to discover this. He ate a lot of cadmium. Cadmium is weirdly bad for the thyroid also, this heavy metal. It's a toxic heavy metal. One of the ones that people don't know about as much. It's one of the top 4 toxic heavy metals that you'll find in your foods and stuff. And where is it a lot in? Chocolate. It's in chocolate a lot. In fact, the natural coca supplements, I have a video on this on my YouTube channel, just search coca. And I show all the supplements. I actually illegally probably copied from a third-party review website. But you can see which supplements have it, and you'd be surprised. They have dangerously high levels of cadmium. By the way, the brand you guys should get is Coca Via. Amazing brand. And the best one is these little, they have these little things that you can open and pour the powder out of. That's the best version of Coca Via. Anyway, then that's number 1, processed food. Number 2, he slept less than 5 hours. What does that do to you? Disrupts your immune system. What's your immune system? It's not just for viruses. It's the vigilance system going to look for your cancers and kill them. Now it doesn't work. By the way, guys, if you sleep instead of 7 hours, if you go to 5 hours, your whole immune system changes. And if you go from, it's really bad. And if it's broken in between, and we know this, but I want the audience to know too. And then he continued to take low dose growth hormone. I think he's mentioned this a couple of times. It's visible from his skin, you can tell. And that prevents apoptosis and, again, growing nodules. It continues to grow the nodule. Then he started, I don't know why he did this. He saw high blood sugar. So a year ago or so, he started taking Lantus insulin at night. Now, before he was saying, I'm not eating for 12 hours during the day. He doesn't eat at night, then he doesn't eat 4 hours in the morning. But now he started injecting Lantus at night. So now the insulin is going all day. So there's no autophagy, there is not much apoptosis, and there's no signaling for that body to look for that nodule, look for that cancerous cell and kill it. And then he perfected it. He added 2 more things. He added a yearly CT scan on his coronary artery. I tried to explain to him CT scans have the highest radiation of all scans that you can physically do. You don't need a freaking yearly one. The calcium, he's doing aortic scans though too, so that's different. The problem is the radiation is so powerful, and radiation tremendously worsens thyroid cancer development, more than many other cancers I found out today. And then, so he was doing like literally right next to the thyroid. So it was hitting it each time. Every year it was hitting it, making it worse. And then he was injecting glutathione from Titan Medical into his muscles. And injecting the glutathione immediately getting rid of oxidative stress in the body so his body doesn't feel like it's in stress, turning off the immune system even more. So it's even less vigilant. And this is what I call Palumbo's thyroid cancer recipe. Now what he's doing in order to control this is I didn't mean it in a bad way, but he's using pig enzymes. He's using pig enzymes to try to digest the nodules. I don't know if you watch this video, Derek, but there's some pig enzymes, literally lipases, proteases, literally that, thinking that they will randomly, selectively digest the nodules. The problem is these are the kind of people that teach bodybuilders how to take care of their health. And when I respect people like that if they're good people and elderly people and uncles and they treat us like mentors and they're kind. But when you attack people that love you, that are younger than you, and that love you and admire you. I called Dave. You know, I never told anyone about this. 3-4 months ago, I called Dave. Told him, Dave, Fuad Abiad is going to defeat your channel. This was before Fuad attacked Nick. I liked Fuad. I just said, listen, dude, he's going to defeat your channel and your channel's going to be gone soon. You have to improve your content. This is when he started doing that content with the old guys. And he listened to me, stayed on the phone with me for an hour and a half. I told him I have to go. I have stuff to do. I sat with him. Spent time. And this is the thanks I got after everything. So Dave, if that's the case, let us tell you, man, you don't know anything about health, for God's sake, nothing. And we know more than you. I know much more than you. I just respected you. That's all. So I'm sorry that ends on a bad note, but honestly, that's a recipe for thyroid cancer. Now, what are the other things I discovered about thyroid that are interesting? Number one, TSH promotes hyperplasia of the thyroid. Norepinephrine stimulates the release of TRH from the hypothalamus, causing TSH to be released by the pituitary, which is one of the reasons our metabolism goes up when we get in the cold. If you take a cold shower, your adrenaline gets released. I don't know if you get excited in the morning if you take a cold shower, guys. But what that's doing, like when you go out in the cold, is metabolism through TSH. Dopamine receptor agonists, shockingly, suppress TSH synthesis. So when you take cabergoline on your decacycle, you're suppressing TSH. Not only that, you're suppressing growth hormone, by the way. Dopamine agonists also suppress growth hormone. In fact, they're a medication used to treat pituitary tumors of growth hormone. Dopamine agonists. So when you're on cycle and you're on deca, but you're not on growth hormone, better not be taking cabergoline. That's not a good idea. That's a dopamine agonist. That's not even taking an amphetamine, which we could talk about later. So these are interesting things I discovered. Many interesting things along the way of reading about thyroid cancer. It wasn't all about Palumbo. I just wanted to start it with that. So
did you find out evidence that ACG is also able to agonize the thyroid stimulating hormone receptor? Because I read that also somewhere, where ACG is able to activate thyroid stimulating hormone, and that's why it's able to increase metabolism slightly. And that's one of the reasons why metabolic rate stays elevated in pregnant women, because ACG agonizes the TSH receptor. So elevated TSH and ACG, that's a good recipe too.
I had no idea. That's incredible. Now, IGF1 overexpression of the thyroid increases thyroid glandular weight for sure. Epidemiological studies reveal in healthy people, levels of IGF1 are associated positively with glandular weight of the thyroid. So it's not just in these acromegaly people. Acromegalic people have thyroid vascularity. Now, but guys, why are we talking about acromegaly? It's not about that. It's about when you take growth hormone. That's why you should be concerned about your thyroid. It's not just if you abuse it, because we're talking about IGF-1 levels among the common population being associated with thyroid size, right?
So with the growth hormone use, they're going to be higher anyway.
Exactly.
Your IGF-1.
What's interesting is I'm seeing higher TSHs in blood work nowadays, like across the map, it seems like.
So I see it a lot.
I'll tell you how that happens next.
I'm able to fix it with all of my clients, and it's not that difficult, to get your TSH under control. And whether you do that with supplementation from thyroxine itself or by increasing your micronutrient intake, because a lot of people, they don't either convert too much of the T4 into the T3, or they don't convert enough. And growth hormone plays a role in that as well. But selenium deficiency also plays a part.
Yes, selenium.
Right? So
selenium is,
and of course, the problem is, like, when you're stimulating hypertrophy and hyperplasia all the time, you're depleting your selenium and zinc concentrations. So now now your T3 is going down, your TSH goes skies high.
So early in the course of overdosing growth hormone, like this is in studies of acromegaly, longitudinal studies. What happens first is this: a diffuse goiter develops. Diffuse meaning the thyroid grows and it doesn't have individual tumors. Then thyroid autonomy occurs, in which nodule formation happens and growth can continue without TSH. Your TSH can stay low on that growth hormone because it tanks your growth hormone. Because what happens is this: your thyroid grows. Your thyroid recognizes it's huge and it's very powerful. So your thyroid stimulating hormone from your pituitary stops. I don't know exactly how the feedback loop comes back yet because I've only had 6 hours, but your TSH slows down. But then this thing has now become autonomous. It can continue growing just via the growth hormone in the cases of high growth hormone use. But
is that still benign formation, or is that already cancerous at that point?
So I actually have percentages of how much cancerous they are, but we're talking about benign ones so far. So then the thing is though, if with these acromegaly people, if they successfully treat the GH, the thyroid side will reduce, but the nodules will not disappear. So it could have happened that Palumbo had nodules all the way back then that were not cancerous. And years later, all that radiation therapy turned it cancerous. By the way, I messaged Palumbo just before we started, and he told me that he does the X-ray, the CT scan every year. So that's serious radiation.
I got warned to not do that. I would do the chest X-ray too. It was part of a package like years ago. And I did like, you do this every year? I said, oh, this is the 3rd time. And these guys said, no, don't do this X-ray every year, only when it's necessary.
Exactly. And especially with the CAC score, because the calcium builds up so slowly. So when iodine is sufficient, 5% of people in general have thyroid nodules. They say 68% harbor what's called occult nodules. These are tiny nodules that you can barely see except with very advanced scanning. Like, for example, ultrasounds are the best. They detect the ultrasounds will find 65% nodules in people. 50,
I have a small one also here, like 2 millimeters or 1
with the ultrasound. You found it?
Yeah, with the ultrasound. Yeah.
I bet you I have one. And by the way, many people can't even feel theirs. It's very common, I read.
I can't feel it. This lady was like, for 20 minutes, she's like, I think there's something there. So yeah, I got to keep my eye on it because of course I'm still on growth hormone.
So 16 million Americans have a palpable nodule. 16 million have a palpable one. And about 10% of those have a cancer, 5% have compressive problems, and 5% of thyroid dysfunction in general. So the interesting thing is that they were wondering, is thyroid cancer incidence actually increasing in the world, or is it just the detection that's increasing? A great meta-analysis found indeed that the incidence is increasing and the mortality is also increasing from papillary cancer, which is what Dave has. Now, the interesting thing about nitrates is this. Nitrates compete with iodide for the sodium iodide symporter. And because they compete with it, they cause an increase in TSH, the nitrate consumption. So what are nitrates? You'll find them in beets have a lot of nitrate. Actually, the worst one is rockets, by the way. Never get a rocket salad. That's a ridiculous salad. Ridiculous. Rockets are not supposed to be on salad. They don't have any value, and they're the highest nitrate content per weight of any vegetable. Beets have a lot too, but I eat beets because they're interesting. But some things have nitrates. 5% of them turn into nitrites in the body, and those are toxic, carcinogenic, and they can turn into N-nitrose compounds, which are also carcinogenic, and then could damage the thyroid further. But it does work to the thyroid. Due to the TSH elevation, it causes thyroid hypertrophy. And it also, it does something else I forgot about. There's some other interesting things. BPA actually has some anti-thyroid direct effects that are, I don't know if they're dependent on estrogen or not. So, for example, it inhibits BPA, the plastic that's called bisphenol A. It inhibits thrombopoietin activity, TPO. And it also binds to the thyroid hormone receptor weakly, antagonizing the effect of T3. Some other weird things I came across. A lot of the stain repellent products in homes are actually associated with thyroid disease. I looked through all the toxins. Cadmium is extremely strongly associated with thyroid disease. And then because of you, Derek, you were asking last time about Hashimoto's and Graves', which I didn't know anything about. So I looked a little bit into them to try to figure out, like, is that part of this whole thing? And I didn't. They do make you more likely to get thyroid cancer. But what I discovered was this: excess iodine intake is associated with more autoimmune thyroid disease. And autoimmune diseases are like 85% female. Like the only autoimmune disease that is equivalent for both genders is type 1 diabetes in youths, in children, only when they're children. And the reason, by the way, is because of estrogen response elements in the immune system.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I determined that. The citations also will be on the blog post for you guys.
So when you say estrogen response elements, is that like the overall estrogen burden in the body, or because obviously females produce way more than men, or what are we talking about exactly?
We're talking about the genes that code for the inflammatory cytokines and immune system cells are activated by estrogen response elements. So what I wrote down here specifically is over half of the immune genes that are overexpressed in the women that have been insulted with antigens in this individual study had estrogen response elements compared to 10% of the men's immune genes that are overexpressed following that challenge. An antigen, by the way, is just something that your body thinks is foreign and wants to attack.
See, it's interesting because I always noticed way more females with Hashimoto's for sure. It's like way more common.
And also, just for the audience to know, if you want to find out if you have a thyroid autoimmune issue, this is what you should check out. These are the antibodies you want to look for: anti-TSHR, which is the receptor of thyroid, anti-TPO, and you want to check out anti-TG. And the numbers, respectively, should be 1.75. That's the reference range over most of the studies. Over 1.75, over 35, and over 20 individually. And individually, each of those, the antibodies for all of those three depend on sort of the kind of disease that they have. Like Graves' disease will have more of the anti-receptor antibodies, whereas Hashimoto's will have more of the anti-thyroglobulin, the TG. That's sort of an overview of the autoimmune stuff. And then there's some interesting stuff about environment and thyroid disease. So smoking is protective for Hashimoto's, okay? But increases the likelihood of Graves by 3.3x. And there's reasons why, like there's specific reasons. Smoking lowers anti-TG and anti-TPO antibody levels.
Weird.
And it helps colitis, but worsens Crohn's. So it's the opposite of what I thought. So 15 years.
They got a huge sample size, of course, for smokers. So I'm sure they can really pinpoint what's going on with the community that is smoking cigarettes.
And teetotalers, people who don't drink alcohol, are 2.17 times more likely to develop an autoimmune thyroid disorder. More than 200% more likely. And the reason probably why is because alcohol actually reduces immune function. In fact, a lot of alcohols, like if you binge drink, you'll just shut down your immune system. So that's probably the reason why.
You're telling us at least one glass of alcohol per year to
per year. You're not very Dutch, huh?
No, I mean, I used to drink a lot, I've been around, so I'm just kind of over it.
The final thing I want to mention, H. pylori increases the likelihood also polyaromatic hydrocarbons do. Lithium really messes with the thyroid system in a lot of different ways. They'll be in the notes. I don't think people want to hear it. And finally, I have a lot of notes about iodine supplementation. Did you know that iodine is it 10 times? I think it's 10 times more potent of an antioxidant than vitamin C. And it's 50 times more potent than iodide. And most of the supplements are a mixture of iodide and iodine. So if you're going to take a supplement, probably should take iodine. And supplementing with it at higher doses raises TSH and potentially could cause the growth of the thyroid also. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, so with iodine, there's instances at a higher over 1,000 micrograms per day. I believe TSH goes up significantly. But if you around that ideal spot, then it actually prevents, a lot of these weird thyroid formations and thyroid levels in the body. So you want just iodine sufficiency, not overdo it. And then some of the supplements are like 1,000 micrograms by themselves. You add a few eggs on top.
Do you guys use multivitamins ever, by the way? No, you avoid it?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was interested because I know like some people, they see it as you're overburdening your body with a clusterfuck of stuff at once. So you can't like accurately get each amount that you want through, whatever supplementation means you do or through your diet. And then some people think it's like an insurance policy. So I was kind of interested to hear your stance on it.
I have a slow release version that I take with meals, and then whatever my body wants to take from that, it will take. And the rest you will, excrete, right? But I eat very nutritious foods anyway. So I have several diets that I follow sometimes that have no supplementation attached. And I still get the majority of my micronutrients in, besides the vitamin D3, for example, which you need through sun exposure. So I get that in supplemental form. Maybe I'm not happy with my selenium intake. I add a little bit or add a few Brazil nuts and I'm good. Right. So there's there's diet interventions you can put into practice where you can get all the micronutrients already, and then you like a lot of the Thorn research one that you're taking, right? That's like in the morning that's a couple tablets, and in the evening a couple tablets. Then you get 100% to 1,000% of whatever the micronutrients it contains. But it's not always required. You can get like 50% of the micronutrients from supplementation and the rest from food. And then maybe you end up at 125% of the daily or the dietary reference intake, and underneath the upper tolerable limit. So that's why I make all the micronutrients for all of my clients, to make sure that we stay on top of everything, and the ratio between electrolytes and the ratio between omega-3s and omega-6s and omega-9s, right? Because they all go through similar transport or similar enzymatic reactions, So it's an insurance policy, but you should still eat nutritious food. People that go whey protein 100% on their diet, they miss a lot on a lot of micronutrients and iodine, obviously, because it's only found in whole eggs. And
kind of got me thinking on the iodine part, though, because some of these multivitamins have your daily amount of iodine in it. And then if you're having a shit ton of iodized salt on all your foods all day, and then you're having, whatever else is in your diet, if you have a fairly comprehensive diet, is that too much iodine where you're stressing out your thyroid?
So let's say you have 10 grams of iodized salt per day, you get about 450 micrograms of iodine. So that's a lot. Still
Let me say something before we continue.
To the top. Yeah,
I don't think we should continue yet, because the 400 to 600 microgram range can induce or worsen antibody formation for sure, increasing immunogenicity of TG. Also, in populations that have been given iodized salt, they call them iodinization. They have found that anti-TPO antibodies go from 14% to 24%, and anti-TG antibodies go from 14% to 20%. So I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying 400 is wrong. I'm just saying there is an antibody developing, meaning your body is reacting to your thyroid at that dose. So potentially it could be too much for you.
So you don't use the multivitamin, Leo, right?
I don't, for a variety of reasons, which I can get into. Really quickly. Okay. I don't think that everyone else shouldn't use them, and that's not what I mean at all. If you want to be efficient, like if you can't take too many supplements, and do you have a multivitamin in your array, Derek, from Gorilla?
No, I was thinking of designing one though.
That's what I'm thinking. So there can be designed an excellent multivitamin for people that is not harmful, for people that they can't take 40 supplements like I do, or 50 or whatever the hell, or they don't need to manipulate what they're taking on a daily basis, or depending on what they're eating or whatever. They're not that into it. They want an insurance policy. If you have an insurance policy, companies that I admire, one I admire is Jarrow. The reason why, they don't have a multivitamin. They have a B vitamin. They have a complex for E vitamins. They have an A complex vitamin. They have a mineral supplement. Why don't they combine them together? They don't want to put selenium. They don't want to put iron, especially iron. You'll find it's most multivitamin people, like a lot of vitamin companies know not to include iron in their multivitamins. The reason being is this: not everyone needs iron, and if you are someone like me who wants to live a very long time, you probably want to reduce your iron levels to just, if you're a man, just to the level where you're almost anemic, unless you have a health condition that I don't know about. But like someone like me who's healthy, I really want to be around anemic. Actually, I am almost anemic right now, and I like to be at that level. So I don't want to eat any extra iron. When I eat my liver, which I love to eat, which has choline and folate in it and all these other wonderful things, and it's natural, I get worried about the iron. So I'm not going to take a multivitamin. More than that, I actually want specific amounts of certain things personally. So I'm not always, there's nothing that I do take sometimes. If I don't have liver, I take Jarrow's, which I just want to let the audience know, Jarrow supports the state of Israel with donations. So if you don't like this, the fascism or apartheid or anything like that, maybe you don't buy it, but I do sometimes. I admit I do. And I buy the B Right vitamin, which has a good B complex. Sometimes I'll do that, and I use some of their other vitamins, but not a whole just in one. I already take 50 supplements. What would be the point? I'm taking I'm taking potassium, I'm taking magnesium, I'm taking everything individually. And I'm sometimes.
So you actually take all of the minerals too.
Yeah. Zinc. You can't take zinc with your multivitamin, because are you taking a multivitamin on an empty stomach?
Yeah.
Then you're not then you're not going to digest the zinc. Zinc is not digestible with food. You got.
Yeah, but I have enough meat throughout the day to kind of.
No, but Maybe. I don't know, because a lot of the studies on zinc supplementation are not with people that are like vegans. I mean, they're not eating a lot of meat, maybe like you, so I guess maybe it wouldn't count for you. But someone like me, I need the zinc separately. I need to absorb it because it really affects the brain tremendously.
Yeah, I take a couple supplements separately on an empty stomach, but what I do majority of the time, you take your supplements on an empty stomach 30 minutes before meals. You allow for adequate time to absorb the supplements, which should be absorbed in a state of fasted state, and then whatever supplements don't get absorbed, you wash it away with food.
That's very good.
And then it gets absorbed. So the convenience, of course, that's why multivitamins are so convenient, because they you cover all bases for the cases that are people that are not so pay so much attention to their diet. Like I do, because I work from home. I'm self-employed. I can spend all day in the kitchen if I wanted to, and then answer messages on the phone. But not everybody is so so fortunate to be in that position. And for people who have very busy lives, multivitamin on empty stomach is probably okay. And then 30 minutes later, you have a meal and you take care of this, like the fat soluble vitamins or micronutrients that need some sort of transporter that comes from the food or through enzymatic reactions in the intestinal tract.
Steve, you still not giving up selenium? I don't me and Steve always have this like privately where I'm like, you need to stop selenium. He likes selenium because it's very useful in the body. It's an antioxidant. It's used in so many processes. He's totally right.
I'm not overdoing it.
No, but
I'm getting 400, 500 micrograms per day.
But you're trying to kill that one thing that is associated with selenium. So but
so many things are associated with NAFLD. That's the problem. Everything is like I spent like 4 months on liver tox, and everything is associated with and I have none of the symptoms. I don't have high serum triglycerides.
I don't think you have.
I cut out all the fruit now because I found the correlation between fructose intake and whether that's from fruit or high fructose corn syrup. And so I'm only eating vegetables, and somehow I'm still cognitive. I'm surprised by this fact.
How is your appetite and whatnot, and mental clarity and stuff?
Can I go to the bathroom real quick? I know it's very unprofessional, but
I've been sipping on coffee. Go,
and then we just cut it in
does
between.
This all the time on his podcast. People eat, people take. We would chill. I would eat too if I actually did eat.
Me and Leo can talk about how to make Adderall more effective while you're gone.
Go for it. Yeah, I'll be gone.
Let's
My apologies, guys.
So number one, Derek, number one, I want to mention to the audience that I'm not some kind of amphetamine freak or something like that. Although I look like one, I understand that I act like one and stuff like that, but I'm actually not. How I got introduced to this really quickly, I'm not gifted at all. I'm not intelligent. I'm really average in every kind of way, and I didn't have many advantages in life. Growing up without parents, mostly, trying to struggle to do well in school. Got into a school, shouldn't have gotten into Carnegie Mellon, failed the first year, screwed up, all that kind of stuff. And my father at the time, alcoholic, was depending on me, didn't have a job, needed help. And I really wanted to work hard, make money and get a job. And so I was really trying to do my best. And I had been diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger because my mom's American, so I got diagnosed. So I said, you know what? I didn't think I had ADHD. I knew I couldn't focus well. I couldn't focus. I mean, I would read something, not pay attention, but it's because I'm stupid. It's not because anything else. That's what I thought at the time. That's what I thought. So I went to a doctor and I said, hey, I have ADHD. I've been diagnosed before. They tested me. They gave me 15 milligrams of Adderall, and they told me to take it every single day. And I did that. But I also changed my entire life, and I did an incredible thing. And in 2 years, I completely transformed my brain, my function, everything. I went from a failing student to a 4.0 student. I became the first in the history of the undergraduate curriculum of Carnegie Mellon to be recommended to be a TA of the mathematical optimization course. I've mentioned this in an interview with Arthur Benjamin, the mathematician on my channel before. I accomplished great things, and I was failing algebra in high school, didn't know anything. And I all did that because of amphetamines. Now, later on, I discovered that a lot of things that this doctor told me were wrong. The dose I used was way too high. I should have taken days off. There were a lot of mistakes. And along the way, later on in life, as you can tell from my story, I had many experiences, and later on developed depression, anxiety, many neurological problems. And I had to learn about the nervous system. And along the way, I hadn't been using amphetamines for years and years, but along the way, I learned some ways to optimize it, some ways to make it a little bit more effective. So I want to talk to you guys very briefly today about that. I'm not going to tell you too many things because this is something I spend basically all my time reading about. But I'm going to give you some quick tips, okay? Number one, the dose, higher doses are not better. What happens is this: at higher doses, our body has two nervous systems. One is called the parasympathetic, one is called the sympathetic. The sympathetic sounds like it's friendly to you, but it's not. That's the fight or flight one. That's the angry one. So what happens is this: when you take higher doses of amphetamines do two things, unlike cocaine. Cocaine only does one thing. In your brain, you have two neurons. These neurons communicate a hormone between each other. Cocaine tells the hormone that's communicating dopamine not to let that hormone back out of the extracellular space, basically. So you feel more of that hormone. Amphetamines don't just do that. They do that, but they also cause more of a release of dopamine. So they do two things. And they're more powerful because of that reason. Now, what's a drug like cocaine? Bupropion, Wellbutrin. It's a common antidepressant. Now, Wellbutrin actually, at the actual drug, by the way, and I know the pro-drug in this case, bupropion, unlike the drug we were talking about last time, it is actually a pro-drug. The drug that's mainly used in the body actually affects norepinephrine, which is noradrenaline, that really sympathetic driving thing. It's cortisol and adrenaline that drive that sympathetic nervous drive, that trend feeling. So bupropion, the actual drug that's in your body, affects more noradrenaline, but the actual bupropion drug is a dopamine reuptake inhibitor, similar to cocaine. Now, amphetamine is great because it's very dopaminergic. It's one of the most dopaminergic drugs. The first lesson I'll teach you is this: amphetamine has two isomer forms. They're like a chemist came on my show recently, described it very well. They're like two hands. You know, your hands are the same, but they're not quite the same. They're symmetric opposites. One is called the dextro rotation of amphetamine, dextroamphetamine, also called dexedrine. One is called the levoamphetamine. So levoamphetamine, Adderall is about 25% levoamphetamine, 75% dextroamphetamine. That's why it's a branded product. That's why brand name Adderall works better than generic Adderall. What is generic Adderall? Amphetamine salts, equal amounts of both of them. Why do you want more of dextroamphetamine? It has more dopaminergic effect, less adrenaline effect. Now, if you're somebody who has weird, not weird, if you have melancholic depression, which means that you don't, when I get depressed, I get anxious. Some people get depressed, they just lay in bed, they don't have energy. For those people, noradrenaline is great. They don't mind. They want the levoamphetamine. They want to be up. Because, by the way, amphetamines used to be antidepressants. The only reason they stopped giving them to people is because people abuse them, just like opioids. They're actually excellent. I mean, I'm not recommending to people, they're effective antidepressants. Anyway, back to the point. First thing, dextroamphetamine. Second thing, you choose that because more dopaminergic effect, less sympathetic nervous drive, less raciness, less heartbeat, less stress on your body, less taxation in general, a little bit less. It's also slightly weaker because of that reason. You'll feel a little bit less of it. Second thing, you don't need 15 milligrams. And for God's sake, you don't need 20 milligrams ever in your life. If you take more than 10 milligrams, you are quickly downregulating your dopamine receptors. Dopamine is a neurotoxin. What does that mean? Dopamine is excitatory. Any hormone in the nervous system that's excitatory causes neurons to get so much energy that they may die. They may die either because of pro-inflammatory cytokines reacting to it or because of the stress of the excitation. So the neurons quickly downregulate dopamine receptors. That's why drug addicts have a very difficult time, one of the reasons, because they keep chasing that high. So to not chase the high, you have to do two things. Number one, you don't take the dose so high that your body's like, there's too much dopamine in my brain. I really need to downregulate. Number two, you need to take days off every week. Every week, you have to take at least 2 days off. My recommendation for anybody is 3 days off. You can't use it more than that and get it effectively. But if you only do it 4 days a week, you'll still get that great effect. If you guys don't have more comments, I'll go to the next one.
So every other day administration, basically.
I do 4. I don't actually take it all the time, but if I did, I would do 4 days a week and then take 3 days off.
How does it compare to modafinil? Because I've never really had access to Adderall.
Far superior. But the reason is this. So modafinil is excellent at the wakefulness feeling, just being alive. Dopamine, why I say it's far superior, why it allows people to do what I did is this. What I used it for was not to focus. It was to trick myself to enjoy reading. I'm a person that didn't like to read. I didn't like to read.
Reward system, right?
Yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this because this is the trick. This is how you hack. This is biohacking. So this is the issue. Dopamine gets released when you're supposed to be enjoying something. How you get addicted to food and carbohydrates is dopamine. Now, my dopamine might have came from, I don't know what I used to like to do, party with friends or see a chick or whatever the hell I used to do, or watch TV, or you pick up girls. So my problem was that. Now, some people, they grew up with a parent who was a biologist. They taught them things when they were young. They said the world is like this, the sun and the moon, and they got interested. They realized from a young age, wow, learning is fun, curiosity, all of that. I didn't get that. So I'm looking at a book, trying to pass the exam. I'm not interested. So what I did was, number one, starve myself of dopamine, remove all the dopaminergic as much as I could around my life. I quit music for years. I quit listening to music. I quit watching TV for months. And then I started watching TV for like 1 hour at the end of the day, and I could maintain that. I stopped seeing any friends. Like I said, I took the bus to school every day. I go sort of partially by choice, partially not. I could have gotten a crappy car, but I took the bus in Pittsburgh with interesting people every day just to feel like crap, really. Everything was like sort of down-regulated. And then when I was studying, I would take that Adderall. And while I was reading, I got two things. Number one, I enjoyed it. Number two, I got habituated to it. I got habituated to that practice. And then what happened? Now I don't need any amphetamine to read a book. I can read a book all day. I can read 600 pages. I can read from morning to night and stay focused and have no problems. And I'll get into why later. Actually, let's do it now. So this is one of the problems. I've talked about on my channel before. People don't really know about this in the drug addiction community. Drugs make the brain plastic. Amphetamines, in fact, by the way, another reason you should use a low dose, since we're talking about it, at one dose of amphetamines, rodents' brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a growth factor in the brain, will increase. At double that dose, it will decrease because of the toxicity, of the excitement. So what happens when you take Adderall every day? You're not just habituating yourself, you're reorganizing your brain. And that's why there are so many studies, so many, that show that people with ADHD that take amphetamines for a period of years no longer require them. They're actually healed. Because not only that, but by the way, the DAT, the dopamine transporter, it organizes the dopamine system in the brain. So affecting that, maybe directly organizing that, just even specifically the dopamine system. Forget about all the other systems that are now plastic while you're studying. They're now, what does plastic mean? New neurons developed, agile, it's changing, your brain is changing. Can't teach an old dog new tricks? Now you can, because you have plasticity.
So you have that 5 milligram prescription, right? Whereas typically, what is the lowest dosage format for Adderall prescribed? Like, is it even under 10 milligrams? Can you even get a 5 milligram? So
they do, yeah. They sometimes give women. It's based on like size of body. I've noticed some women get 5 milligram, but most men I know are their first prescription is 15, which is, I really believe, irresponsible of doctors. That's how you get addicted to it. I went through, not addiction, but I went through periods of I didn't know. I used to think I had seasonal depression because I would get sad when the sun went down. I didn't realize it's the 15 milligrams of amphetamine I'm taking in the morning that's wearing off. That's too much. That's way too much. That's a burst where you should never feel euphoric. Euphoria is neurotoxicity, just a little bit lower than that. Always.
What do you think about Adderall instant release versus extended release? Because most people are getting extended.
The demon of life. Extended release ruined. Listen to this, guys. Dopamine agonizes adrenaline receptors also. So if you have extended release while you're in bed at night, your brain is agonizing your adrenaline receptors. There is no possible way your sleep is right.
So it's like, I don't even know if they prescribe instant release in Canada anymore. So
I'll tell you why they don't do why they do extended. There's two reasons. Number one, addiction potential. Extended is you feel it less. But the thing is, I don't believe there's a big addiction potential because you're taking one pill. It's not a habit like snorting or smoking cigarettes. It's different. You don't attach it to an action as much. But number two, bipolar disorder. The danger, first of all, dopamine can be very dangerous. Some people, so schizophrenia, there's a dopamine hypothesis of schizophrenia. There's a dopamine hypothesis of bipolar disorder. Most people who use stimulants famously, like rock stars and stuff, develop bipolar disorder. So the concern would be that the cyclothymia, this up and down could be dangerous. And that's why they're trying to tell you not to take days off and all of that. But it won't work. If you're trying to hack your body like we are, you're not actually a diseased person. You're trying to be supraphysiologic. That's the way to do it.
So what do you do if you're ADHD, but you can't even get access to the thing that you're supposed to be using? Because that seems like the majority of what scenario people are in.
Then you need to get friends.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what
You
it's.
have friends. You have friends. But everyone else should get friends. We should all become friends. No, but really, look, I mean, I don't know how it is in Canada. I can't imagine that they could ban dextroamphetamine short release in Canada. I mean, they do in Dubai, but you're talking about Dubai. I mean, even in England, they don't have it. God, you might be right. British system, maybe.
It's very difficult to get certain.
Yeah, in
it's
England,
not available here either. You know, on prescription, but it's impossible to get without it.
I was once put on 36 milligrams of methylphenidate Concerta, the long release in England. That thing was a horrific nightmare. I didn't because at the time I still didn't know. I was like ADHD medication. I didn't know anything. I went through every mistake you can do. This is like through trial and error. This is the way, like I'm telling the audience, this is the way to do it. Never go above 10 milligrams in your life. There's no need. And if you did, there are ways to undo it. You can like block your dopamine receptors, take time off, desensitize, and it'll work all better. Now, there are more tips that are more interesting that people haven't heard of. So the next one is the sigma-1 receptor. You have to agonize the sigma-1 receptor. You have to. If you're not doing this, you're lazy or you don't know what you're doing. So one way you can do is you can take a DHEA supplement like Steve does. Steve loves DHEA. One of the reasons...
Not now. I'm drug-free, guys, besides the growth hormone and the selenium.
Do you really not take DHEA also?
No, I don't need it. I'm in the middle top of the reference range.
Oh, no, I take it for this reason. So DHEA, DHEA sulfate is an agonist of the sigma-1 receptor in the brain. And this receptor is very not well understood, recently discovered. The sigma-1 receptor agonism upregulates dopaminergic activity in the brain. So instead of taking more amphetamine, and getting more sympathetic nervous drive, what do? You go take the sigma-1 receptor agonist also, so you upregulate that dopaminergic effect without taking more amphetamine. So
that's where the adrenal fatigue response or reduction comes from DHEA supplements. You know, that's why I put it on most of my guys' protocol. It's like, you know, you're in the that sympathetic stage all the time. It's time to relax. That's how you recover.
So you have a couple of choices. You could take DHA, that's an easy one. You could take fluvoxamine, the SSRI I take. Why do I take fluvoxamine? It's because it's a sigma-1 agonist. But what can you take also that's very effective? An acetylcholinesterase inhibitor called donepezil. Donepezil is not only the Alzheimer's disease medication that is given for people with memory issues, and not only potentially, it's not given to them to slow down the progression of the disease, but potentially it could slow down the degradation of cholinergic neurons in the hippocampus or in other areas, but it's a potent sigma-1 agonist. So I take 20 milligrams of donepezil every time I take my 5 milligrams of dextroamphetamine together. Enhances.
But a natural alternative that might be decently effective would be
DHA sulfate does it.
What about ginkgo biloba, huperzine A, etc.?
No, you're talking about this. They're amazing, of course, and your product contains them amazingly. That's absolutely right. I'm just talking about the sigma-1. I still take those. I still take those in the morning. I still take them also. Gotcha. Yeah, but and ginkgo has way more benefits also than just that, and so does huperzine and NMDA blockade. So anyway, continuing on past that, ghrelin receptor agonism. One of the reasons I gained a lot of weight recently, I didn't mention to anyone, I've been using MK677 for.
Oh shit!
Oh yeah, I didn't tell anyone that.
I didn't even know that.
So the ghrelin receptor also amplifies dopaminergic activity in the brain. Now, growth hormone is not the same way. So I have some notes on this about growth hormone. I don't know if I wrote it down here. No, I didn't write it. But ghrelin, so the the growth hormone secretagogue receptor, which is really the ghrelin receptor, agonism there directly causes upregulation of dopaminergic signaling. But agonizing dopamine receptors downregulates growth hormone. But it's not through the ghrelin receptor. So this is a separate pathway. So I've been experimenting with this for the last 2 months. Sometimes I do experiments. I don't know if
what dose?
25.
Wow, you did the full blown.
Were you on 25?
How was your blood sugar level in the morning?
I didn't measure it, honestly. It was ridiculous. It was probably, I'm fat.
The studies showed, I think it was like 12.5 was almost as effective GH increase wise, but the IGF increase was substantially lower, if I recall correctly.
Maybe you read a study that I didn't read. All of the studies that I read used 25, and interesting.
Yeah, so that's the dose they use in the trials, I believe. But when they were doing dose response comparisons, I recall fairly vividly writing an article in like 2017 where they compared 12.5 versus 25, and it was like 80% the GH increase or something, but like a fraction of the IGF-1, which for you sounds like it may be more ideal because you want less of the IGF-1, right?
I mean,
I think it's also
it probably just
feedback.
means less no, I don't necessarily want less. Well, I guess that's true. Yeah, that's true. You're right. Yeah, I do want less IGF-1. But I should mention
metformin. Did you take metformin with
I'm
the
always taking
MK6?
metformin. I'm always taking empagliflozin. I'm always taking everything, really. I take a lot of things. It increases cyclic adenosine monophosphate. That's what it does exactly. And that's how it increases dopamine. Now, that's not the shocking one. The third one I wanted to mention, probably your audience has never, ever heard of. It's a monoamine oxidase B inhibitor. There are two enzymes that break down what are called the monoamines, serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. These are the three hormones most known in the brain.
I used to have hordenine in our product as a MAO inhibitor. This was to like extend the half-life of PEA, but this was like a primitive, one of the first formulas I made. But anyway, just a side note. So they may sort of know what you're talking about, but anyways, continue.
Oh, really? Oh, great. No, I know they know about MAO. Monoamine oxidase inhibitors, most people know about. The interesting thing about this is this. MAOA breaks down all of the monoamines, right? The reason why I've never even experimented with one of them was just because I knew that systemic effects of inhibiting the breakdown of those catecholamines will affect my heart and other kinds of things because I have higher serotonin levels in my body. But it is not concerning for the audience. It's not like high levels. I'm just freaked out about longevity. So it's not like that. Like Steve, for example, would take 5-HTP, but I won't take it because I don't want higher levels of serotonin in my body. I'm just too scared of it. But because I take so much in my brain.
Yeah, you have an SSRI, so you get, at least like I get a systemic effect and you get a localized effect.
Exactly.
Which at one point, I might actually switch to.
That's what I'm trying to do. So that's what I'm talking about, the MAOB. So the MAOB is different because it only breaks down dopamine. It's very selective. Oh, okay. And there's a new drug. There were also MAOB inhibitors before, but I never thought to use them either. There's a new drug that is very interesting. This drug has two effects that I really like. Number one, it doesn't really matter that it's a reversible MAOB inhibitor. But what's really interesting is it reduces glutamatergic activity in the body by lowering the activity at calcium channels. Now, there's a class of anti-epileptic drugs, which I'm really into researching because I don't want to use GABAergic drugs. And I have a lot of consultation clients who have anxiety issues. And they don't want to use SSRIs because of sexual dysfunction. So I'm often looking at anti-epileptic drugs that slow down basically general activity in the brain. What is called in neuroscience is the excitatory to inhibitory ratio. So changing the E to I ratio. So this drug, which I'm about to mention, so I should name it, it's safinamide, which is Xadago. Xadago actually lowers the basically general glutamatergic activity in the brain slightly. Why is that great for Adderall or amphetamines or dexedrine? Because dexedrine not only increases dopaminergic activity, which is excitatory and can kill neurons, but it does that to glutamatergic activity also. But we want the habituation. We don't want to slowly damage our brains with amphetamine toxicity over our lifetimes, and we don't want our heart rate to rise. So this lowers that a little bit and enhances the dopaminergic effect tremendously at 50 milligrams. The max dose is 100. Tremendously. So now you're at 5 milligrams of dextroamphetamine. You're not using more than that. And and now I'm not done.
Would you take that at the same time or alternating days?
No, I take it every day. Yeah. So then, I wanted to mention another thing. It also ameliorates the blood-brain barrier. This is a very interesting thing about it. It fixes the blood-brain barrier in older people a little bit. You see, as you get older, your blood-brain barrier weakens, which is one of the ways that your brain gets damaged quicker. It also, by the way, reduces what's called dyskinesia, which happens among Parkinson's disease patients when they're given a lot of dopamine, which may indicate, and at worst, it slows the rate of their Parkinson's disease, which is the biggest concern if you're taking dopaminergic drugs. You don't want to end up like Muhammad Ali, our hero, who had Parkinson's disease and he suffered his whole life because when dopaminergic neurons die, that's what happens. But you need to lose like 70% of yours. So it might not happen to you, but you don't want it to happen at all. Well, this drug slows it down on even them. So it may totally inhibit the damage that the amphetamine is doing to you. And, continuing on just very briefly, I just wanted to mention, like, some people think of neuroinflammation when they think of amphetamines. They think like the amphetamine is causing a lot of damage, and then the nervous system, the microglia are releasing inflammatory cytokines. So there is some evidence. I should probably put this on my blog somewhere, but there's some evidence that it's not that's causing methamphetamine toxicity in the brain. When they do the methamphetamine toxicity studies, it's actually just the excitation. It's not the immune system attacking it. So you don't really have to worry about that. That's why we bring up that other point of just reducing glutamatergic activity in general. Now, that'll slightly lower long-term potentiation, memory formation, but not that much. Another thing I wanted to mention, I take an ARB. Guess what? Blockade of the AT1 receptor nullifies apoptotic effects of methamphetamine in rodents. And this has been studied quite a few times using ARBs on the AT1 receptor. Because there's some vascular issues that come from that excitation. And that's some of the remodeling that happens in the supposed amphetamine toxicity. Finally, I wanted to mention just this last thing, the drug-induced plasticity. I just wanted to mention for people who are drug addicts, like I used to be an alcoholic back in the day, it's very, very difficult to get out of addiction because when you're in addiction, your brain has a lot of neurogenesis. And that means your brain is producing a lot of new neurons. So an old dog is learning a lot of new tricks. And then what do you do to get sober? You go to AA. And AA tells you, don't do anything and come and talk to us. And what happens is your brain goes suddenly totally frigid. And you can't adapt. There are no new neurons building. And what are you stuck on? The drug addict brain. So just for people to know, I just wanted to mention, amphetamines cause plasticity. Generally, when you're in addiction, you can never stop addiction without increasing plasticity if you want to do it easily. That's why we've been experimenting with cerebral lysine, which we could talk about also. And while you're on amphetamines, if you increase neurogenesis even more, you'll protect those cells from cell death if they experience any potential cell death, because neurogenesis, growth factors in the body don't just grow new cells. They also stop old cells from dying. So that's a key fact. So if you're using like an SSRI, like fluvoxamine that agonizes sigma-1 receptor with your donepezil, like I am, and then you're protecting your cells a little bit, you're not so afraid of the dopamine. That's my piece for now. But there's many other tips I can offer later.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure it could be relevant for a decent amount of people on here, hopefully. I don't know how easy it is to get the instant release for the majority of people, but
in the US, it's extremely easy. Very easy. I can.
Oh, is it?
Very, very, very. Yeah.
I can get it. I can get glucagon like one peptide receptor agonist, but those I can get. But the appetite suppressants and the peptidase peptidyl 4 inhibitors, which we should discuss on another episode, because that inhibits the breakdown of all growth factors.
Yeah, one thing I did want to discuss before we cap it off is, Leo, you posted that. Well, did you want to say something before I go on to another topic?
No,
go for it.
Okay. So you posted this picture recently of your physique, back in your heyday of powerlifting and whatnot. It was the first shirtless pic I've seen. And I wanted to discuss how long it took you to lose all the muscle when you intentionally came off of the steroids. Because most people, they want to know how long it takes to gain muscle. Obviously, nobody that I know of has documented how long it takes to lose, because most people want to maintain as much as they can naturally. No one has tried intentionally to get as frail as possible, which is
Excuse me?
like self-admittedly, you were trying to lose as much actual, like trying to go to double-digit amounts of protein per day, trying to lose as much of the extra weight as possible. And like, I've never seen anybody document losing everything essentially. So I'm just wondering, how long did that process take? Was it expedited? Like during your recovery process, you said it took you like a year to get your test levels back, or how long was it again?
I never checked my test levels. I only checked sperm.
Oh yeah, you've never checked your blood.
I just checked sperm. Yeah. So just to clarify, although I was an arm wrestler and I was never very big, but I was bigger than those pictures. I unfortunately don't have many pictures because before I met Lucy, I didn't take a lot of pictures of myself. So that. But
you went from 220 at your peak down to
240.
Oh, 240 at your peak.
240 little fat. 220 with very little fat. 215 with very little fat. Like you would have not have thought I was an arm wrestler or a powerlifter or anything. So I was at little fat, but it took, so what happened was, I actually could send you some pictures because I have more pictures of that, because what happened was I met Lucy and then she was taking pictures of me during that time. So what happened was exactly this. I remember. So I stopped working out and I went to TRT, which was 500 milligrams of underground testosterone.
Yeah.
So I went on that for about 2 months. And I remember I visited Scott Mendelson in the gym once, 2 months later, and he said, "Hey, you look really good." And I was like, "What do you mean? I lost all my muscle." Actually, Scott, I remember this conversation. He's like, "I lost all my muscle." He said, "No, you look ripped." And I was like, "What the hell? I'm not on anything. I haven't been to the gym in 2 months." because me and Scott talk about this stuff openly. I mean, that's how I learned my 10,000. That's how I got on 5,000 milligrams in the first place. But anyway, we can talk about that some other time. But so me and Scott talk about that. I was like, I'm on nothing. He's like, you look great. Do what you're doing. I said, I didn't work out. So at that point, I guess I still had muscle, and I have pictures around that time, but very little. I guess everything deflated. My arms stayed. And then I still was not lifting weight, but then I just totally dropped the test. And then added in my protocol, which is on my YouTube channel. It's called Recovering from AES. But I didn't do exactly that. I didn't use clomiphene citrate, which Derek's clinic has, which is way better than Clomid. Well, he has the most advanced stuff, and you can get the best PCT there, really, genuinely. But anyway, the point is I went on that stuff for about a year. And I wasn't checking my test levels, but I was just waiting for the stuff to recover. I was icing my gonads and doing all kinds of weird stuff, trying to recover. I tried everything, and it just slowly went away. I'll show you pictures. Probably my wife would be able to tell you, but I have a picture I just saw the other day. She was showing me like 7 months down the line. I'll send you the pictures. You could put them up. And by a year, I guess I looked like I didn't lift weights, maybe a year and 2 months, something like that. By the time I had Crohn's disease, that's when I started.
You didn't live the full year, though?
Nothing, not even one week.
Hyper accelerated the loss then.
And I also was eating sometimes once a day for months. So not once a day, but like 1 hour a day.
It's like what I'm doing right now. Because I did my last injection 5 months ago, and I still trained the first 3 months, or 4 months, and now it's been 3 weeks. Or not work out. So the first couple of months I still worked out, and now I haven't worked out in 3 weeks. And I'm only 90 kilos, which is less than 200 pounds. But I'm
What's
doing
your
vegetable
lowest body weight, Leo? Like overall after dropping everything?
I got to 159 from 215. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And that was not much fat. Like I would say if the same fat level, the same fat or even more when I was at 159. So, but the thing is, let me comment for the audience that's curious. I wouldn't have lost that kind of muscle if I had went to the gym, and if I had never went to zero, if I had never went from 500, but it could have been 250. If I never went just to zero, it would have really stuck quite a bit. Like I would have lost my shoulders and stuff, but my arms probably would have stayed like 17 and a half, something weird, bigger than what it was naturally. It would have stayed a little bit bigger as long as I had a bit of fat. If you try to stay very low body fat and you go off, that's when it starts to go. And if you actually go off TRT completely, it'll just disappear within months. You'll go back to looking like a guy. Even if you work out, you'll look just like a guy who works out good.
Yeah. So that's basically what I went through. My PCT, I was in a caloric surplus, so I gained a little bit of body fat, and of course, I still went to the gym, and I recovered decently. And now that I'm doing this fasting mimicking diet with vegetables only, and I don't go to the gym, I basically have no protein intake or no significant caloric intake. I'm just shrinking on a daily basis now. It's scary, but I'm not really worried about muscle memory. So I did my testosterone check last weekend. So after the PCT, I was around 500 nanograms per deciliter, and now after 2 weeks of vegetables only, no protein, no fat intake, I'm 375. Wow. And guess where my HBG is at?
75. 90. 120. Wow. Holy
120.
shit.
So sex drive is, I have an understanding wife, luckily, but my sex drive is fuck all, So I did my PCT correctly, right? I did the cookie cutter Novodex Clomid, which we should discuss this Harlem study because I got 2 pages of notes myself.
Is PCT useful, Steve? Is it useful?
In my case, yes. In most of my clients, yes. But you have to let your hormones decline. Like what we saw with Pete Rubish, right? Pete Rubish, he just started, he did his injection. It's a fault of this study as well. They go from their last injection into PCT within a week or 2 weeks.
Tell us about the study briefly.
Yeah, well, it won't be briefly.
I don't know if Derek has time.
No, I can. We can fit it in, I think.
I think so, yeah. Okay, so I made some notes myself. So before we get into the study, a couple of things of note that are important to understand. One of the authors, Olivier de Haan, works for the Doping Authority of the Netherlands.
Yeah,
so the results might be a little bit biased. And I read some of his other studies, and it's very into the athletes are doing something wrong and they're doing doping and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the 5 authors we're a
Is
little
this
bit
the place
biased.
where they can test you on the street and then like throw you
it's
in
not
jail
like
or
Sweden.
something?
No, it's not like Sweden. No. In Holland, is everything goes. You can buy weed and mushrooms everywhere. But if you're on steroids, you're on steroids. You're on bioidentical hormones, which should be outlawed. Even though birth control is over the counter. Anyway,
it's an antagonism toward masculinism. We should mention.
Yeah, that's why I left. Anyway, in the preface, they mentioned that androgen levels should be as low as possible for HPTA to recover. This is not what they told the study sample size. And they mentioned male contraceptives contain progestins, which they did a little bit of a comparison, to azoospermia and declining testosterone levels. So they compared progestins to steroid cycles, right? And the conclusion was that PCT doesn't affect the outcome of the success. So whether they did PCT or not, hormone levels were comparable a year after the finishing the PCT. Now, they had 200 applicants, or over 200 applicants, 100 were chosen, and 80 finished after 1 year. So they did one cycle, PCT, and 1 year of complete abstination of any sort of performance-enhancing drug. Only 80 finished. So the 40% of the 100 chosen were already hypogonadal before they started the experiment. Keep that in mind. So they were told to stay off cycle for 3 months. The cycle minimum duration was 6 weeks. So the cycle had to be minimum 6 weeks, but could be longer. The cycle should have minimum 2 different androgens, could be anything. Total dose should be at least 200 milligrams per week. So it could be basically testosterone and mastrone, 100 milligram each. Right, and that will be 200 milligrams total. All androgens were considered equal on a milligram for milligram basis.
So even if it's a progestin versus a DHT derivative versus a test, okay.
Right, exactly. So that's already at fault there. It shows that the people who did this study have no idea what they're doing. The PCT started within 1 to 4 weeks after the last injection. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Of the entire sample size of the 100 chosen, 96% were using testosterone, 52% used trenbolone, and 39% used mastrone. Now, of the PCT, 70% used Nolvadex, 54% used clomiphene, not enclomiphene, and only 55% used ACG. The average PCT was, of 80% of the people did PCT, and it was an average 4 weeks in duration. So, a PCT not considering of Clomid, which is probably the most effective to restore your HPTA, only 80% or only 54% used Clomid within the first 4 weeks of having their androgens decline. I waited 6 weeks and I was still not clinically androgen deficient. I was below the reference range, but I was nothing like 50 or 21.
Forget about the esters. Forget about the esters that they were using.
Right. So they understand that male contraceptives have synthetic progestins, and 52% were on trenbolone during this experiment. Trenbolone has a 5-month detection time, and so does mastrone. Now, whether that's the metabolites or the trenbolone itself, it's detectable for 5 months, and they went into the esters, etc., but they didn't mention if there was testosterone enanthate and trenbolone acetate and mastrone propionate in detail. Right, so they started their PCT too early. They didn't do PCT correctly with the correct drugs, and they were on the trenbolone sandwich, metabolizing out for the duration of their PCT. It borderlines on unethical because they understand that male contraceptives contain progestins.
Yeah,
and they didn't instruct any of the participants to let their androgens decline, which they recognized at the beginning of this study, and they didn't tell them to be very specific regarding their androgens choices and choices regarding the PCT drugs. They didn't do that. So it's borderline on unethical. They should have did 2 sample sizes, one without the progestins, one with the progestins, and then let their androgens decline to see if progestins were able to have an effect on the success of the outcome of the PCT. And they didn't do a direct analysis and comparison between the 80% of the subjects that did PCT and 20% of the subjects that didn't do a PCT with Nolvadex, Clomid, or ACG. But they still draw the conclusion that PCT has no positive outcome on the success of the restoring testosterone concentrations, LH, FSH, and sperm production, because they didn't compare the 80% of the people that did PCT to the 20% of the people that went off cold turkey. There's no direct comparison. They compare 3 months after finishing PCT to 1 year after PCT. And in most cases, testosterone production, LH production, FSH production is all comparable and comparable to what it was before. Now, of course, the people that were not hypogonadal before they started this.
It's
right.
It's junk.
Right.
It's junk. This is ridiculous.
It's junk. So
I didn't read it, but what he's saying.
No, I read it. I read it twice. And they didn't include micronutrients as a variable. Zinc, vitamin D3, selenium, carnitine.
No, it wouldn't matter.
taurine,
It's already junk
E.
because it's too. The time periods are ridiculous. The time periods are too.
And
so if you're checking a year later,
I can take these hands and grab down and tell you that firsthand PCT was 100% successful because I let my testosterone levels decline.
Yeah, there's absolutely no. By the way, yeah, when I first went off, I actually didn't do anything. I don't think I started my stuff till like a month later or 2 months later or something like that. Like I was, yeah.
Yeah, I waited
but
6
for
weeks.
me, I think of it differently because for me, it wasn't a PCT and I go back on cycle. It was more like that study. And for me, it's the idea of changing gene transcription as quickly as you can. So my gene transcription in my body, it's not just that my hypothalamus and pituitary are not signaling, is that my gene transcription is telling them not to. I have to change my epigenetics. To do that, you need months. And what I need is months of my body thinking, at the very least, that there's not much estrogen signaling. Now we talk about the androgen signaling in another episode. We want to talk about that. We want to talk about progesterone.
Progesterone.
And we have a lot of things to talk about. But
mifepristone, baby.
Mifepristone, exactly. Mifepristone is exactly my point. If you
should have done this in this study.
If you have a year of lower estrogen signaling, there is no question that year your gene transcription has been telling your body to produce more androgens. It's not just about the short-term effect. It's about that getting that gene transcription right, which is why I like to use HDAC inhibitors too, like sodium valproate, which is a GABAergic anti-epileptic medication. But I also like to use sodium butyrate, which is an easy supplement you can get. That's a strong HDAC inhibitor. So you get HDAC inhibitors that let your epigenetics reflect your environment quicker. Take high doses of that tributylin, which is great for you. It's a fatty acid that's great for your GI tract. You go on your HCG. You tell the brain to work. You limit the dysfunction to as small a place as possible. You limit the negative feedback and you wait. And then you slowly remove the other stuff.
One thing of note of this study is that it showed a total sperm count and motility was much better after 1 year of finishing the PCT in the cycle compared to 3 months after. But again, they didn't PCT correctly. They didn't use FSH and LH recombinant in HMG, and they didn't pay attention to the micronutrient intake because, the testicles are full with taurine and selenium, and you still need something to help with testosterone and semen production. So,
what did the Dutch forum say? Did they have any insight that was worth?
The one intelligent guy mentioned about the micronutrients and that that there's no direct comparison between the sample size of 80% doing PCT and 20% that didn't do PCT. So how can you draw the conclusion that PCT is unsuccessful when you didn't do a direct comparative analysis? And it's freaking unethical to let 50% of the people take trenbolone when you already know that male contraceptives contain progestins. So you really don't know. And of course, this guy is, on the National Doping Association. So
I've seen those studies.
They go in there with they manipulate the results. It's like what people do in high school. We have a hypothesis and want this result, and manipulate.
This 1000%. Steve is completely right. I've looked at those studies because of the steroid research we have to do. There's a lot of these doping guys. They work for companies and they produce a lot of these really weird. I've seen them. Yeah, not this one, but this sounds like a big one. But I've seen some really weird studies that are just propaganda.
I can tell you firsthand that these doping guys, they will sell their souls for a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yeah, brothers, I have a book over here. Thankfully, it's not visible because it's very controversial. But there's a book here about IQ.
It's Mein Kampf.
There's a book here about IQ. No, it's not. For God's sake, no, I don't know. Anyway,
move on.
No. I have a lot of books. I have hundreds, thousands of books. So anyway, but the point is, I have a book over here, very controversial book. It's about IQ. There are thousands of papers in academia. I'm not going to say what the subject is about, but there are thousands of papers trying to prove that research wrong. They try so hard. Brother, I used to manage a big behavioral research laboratory as my job. So professors used to come every day, all the time, do their laboratory experiments there. I used to help with study design. You can make a study show anything. As long as somebody doesn't know how to read study design, you can make it do anything. You can make a PCT make them worse easily, way worse, way worse.
When you read the abstract of this study, it makes sense, and then you read the full study. And luckily, it was posted online, so you don't have to purchase it. But there's so many studies you have to drop $20 or $50
No, you go to
for.
sci-hub.se and you put in the DOI number. But not the new ones. Not the new ones.
No, they're not all there. So, a friend of mine is going through the peer review process, and I have no idea how this one passed the peer review process because I sent it to him, and he said, this wouldn't pass my approval.
A lot of things pass. There's the journals of every God knows what.
Yeah.
Everyone has
so I can look down and I will tell you from this much volume that ACG was effective. It raised my testicular volume, my semen quality, and my semen volume. I didn't check my quality yet because I don't lose fertility on cycle. And my PCT was freaking successful.
Which you bring a really interesting point.
But I didn't use the Tremboloni sandwich for years, so maybe that's...
You on cycle though always controlled your estradiol, right? A lot.
No, not a lot. I let it come over the reference range slightly. Yeah, that's where I felt best.
What in the
55, 75 maximum picograms per milliliter. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I can't say from the size thing because my gonads never returned to full size, to be honest with you. And
I don't think the mine are full size either, but they're bigger than on cycle, but they never.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing, guys. My PCT works. I was on hormones for 3 years straight. I've used up to 5 grams in one time. I've used 6 grams when I was before. I definitely didn't have semen quality when I was on. My semen was clear. I don't know, but I don't think I was potent. And now it's 2 years later. I have not taken even HCG. I still have the HCG. I wanted to start taking it actually, but I haven't taken anything. Got my wife pregnant first try. No problems. My semen quality is awesome. I check it frequently still.
Yeah. So you can recover, but you need to do a lengthier PCT. And I think, health, taking health as a factor into it. I think that's the most indicative of being able to restore semen fertility, semen volume and that kind of stuff. I just saw the semen analysis of a friend of mine who did like a short PCT. And then he went off ACG right away, and then 4 months of Novodex right? So he was still on Primabol and testosterone, so it didn't even metabolize by the time he finished his PCT. His testosterone was 56, 57. He did a semen analysis, 20 million sperm, and everything, motility, morphology, all good. That was semen produced on cycle.
Wow, with good morphology also, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I tell him, he is very anal about his food intake.
Very good. And
he gets all his micronutrients in. And I told him, who recommended you this silly short-term PCT? You know better than this. You know me. Exactly. I just wanted to get it under, get off cycle, do my fertility. He said, fertility takes 90 days.
Yes.
For impact. So he checked this, whatever he ejaculated now was produced 90 days ago on cycle when he was blasting his socks off and test primo masterone. So still good. Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I have gotten, that's, so I don't know, but it's, I have recovered though fully. I mean, it is a huge major difference from when I was on cycle. That's for sure.
So Oliver the Hun, I want 4 hours of my life back. And I charge a hefty amount, so I will send you a bill.
BioBros, I guess I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.